Chapter 4182. If you know that you're tired, you still want to see that woman? Dmo Xian's tone was somewhat displeased as he lowered his head and bit her lips. Yiqing Luo was in pain and her body struggled a little as she stared at him resentfully. I'm already so uncomfortable, and you're still not going to comfort me. Her tone was filled with the coquettish manner of a young girl. Dmo Xian's feigned anger could no longer be maintained as he helplessly hugged her delicate body tightly. Why should I comfort you? He asked for it. His mouth was full of complaints, but his movements were gentle and affectionate. Yiqing Luo leaned into the man's arms, her charming eyes squinted. Her posture was as lazy as a cat. If I don't see her, I'm afraid the consequences will be even more troublesome. This is the best solution I can think of. What if anything happens? Dmo Xian pinched her nose. I'll be worried about you, understand? Yiqing Luo nudged her head against his chest. I know so. I'm very serious about protecting myself. She raised her head and rested her chin on Dmo Xian's chest, looking up at his peerless countenance. Xian, tell me. Who is the person who sent Wu Fu heir to my courtyard to create trouble? Dmo Xian knew that this little woman was trying to change the topic. He cooperated and didn't continue to harass the girl. He answered the girl's question. Don't you already have the answer in your heart? Yiqing Luo tilted her little head and blinked her charming eyes. There are too many guesses and there's no way to confirm and verify. Yes. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo had purposely chosen to meet Wu Fu heir. This was because Wu Fu heir had insisted on meeting her at this critical juncture, and had even made a big fuss about it. Wasn't it so that he could see her with his own eyes? And the reason to see her? He just wanted to confirm her current condition. After all, if the person behind the scenes was really related to the Dark Nether Palace, the matters between her and the Hallmaster of the Linglong Palace and the barbaric Bloodbone King, as well as the fact that she might have lost her profound energy. It was not surprising that the Palace of Darkness would know about it. Therefore, Wu Fuer was sent to test and confirm whether she had really lost her powers. Because ever since the news of the Linglong Palace Lord's death spread out, Yiqing Luo then faded out of everyone's line of sight. Even if it was mentioned, the answer he gave was that the Imperial Madam was not feeling well, and was currently recuperating. These were all similar excuses. This made the other party suspicious. Had Yiqing Luo really suffered some sort of injury in the confrontation with the barbaric Bloodbone King, causing any repercussions, etc.? Because of this, Wu Fuer appeared. Of course, this was only her guess. The person behind this might not be someone from the Dark Palace. The reason why Yiqing Luo would allow Wu Fuer to enter the room if she was not careful was to make use of Wu Fuer to eliminate the other party's guesses. Wu Fuer had always been afraid of her. Trembling with fear, he braced himself and entered the room, shouting all sorts of things. But on seeing that Yiqing Luo was safe and sound, and her relaxed attitude, which part of her looked like someone who had lost her profound energy, or someone who was not feeling well. This is a sense. This made Wu Fu heir's fear towards Yiqing Luo even more. Because of this, when he faced Yiqing Luo, he was filled with fear and uneasiness. Chapter 4183. The room door was opened by someone again. It was Old Lai, Patriarch Qiao and the rest. Tang Beiyuan was following behind. Old Lai was the first to bear the brunt as his eyes were filled with joy. Madam D, have you regained your strength? Earlier, they were among those who rushed over with Dmo Xian. When the news of Linglong Palace Lord's death had spread throughout the Earth Realm, and when the death of Linglong Palace Lord was related to the Overlord, almost all the influential figures in the Earth Realm had rushed over to Linglong Palace Lord. These few days, everyone looked calm on the surface, but in actual fact, they were all testing each other. Patriarch Qiao, Old Lai and the rest also knew that Yiqing Luo had temporarily lost her strength. So they went to find trouble with Wu Fuer. One by one they rushed over. Coincidentally, they saw the scene of Wu Fuer being sent flying onto the ground. No. Yiqing Luo looked at their joyous gazes as she shook her head slowly. No. Old Lai looked at her in astonishment. No? Then how did you do it earlier, to send Yen Free City's mysterious maiden flying with one palm? The joy on the faces of the others also gradually faded. Yiqing Luo's weak body, plus the situation of losing her profound energy. After a long time, it was easy to arouse suspicions from all sides. And very easy to get into trouble. Yiqing Luo smiled. But it was a smokescreen for Wu Fuer's fear of me. No matter who the person behind Wu Fuer was, the matter that the other party wanted to investigate would be completely dispelled because of Yiqing Luo's actions today. After all, if Yiqing Luo's body was really affected by the barbaric Bloodbone King, then she wouldn't be able to meet Wu Fuer so boldly and send Wu Fuer flying with one palm. I can tell that Lil Luo is well prepared. Dmo Xian placed the young lady on the bed and pulled the blanket over to cover her up. He then sat by the bed and held her hand as his gaze fell onto a certain spot. When he spoke, the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking manner. Yiqing Luo followed his gaze and looked over. A transparent white figure who was hiding in the corner was faintly discernible in the air. She was discovered just like that. This man was too perceptive. Yiqing Luo held onto Dmo Xian's hand, not letting his line of sight to intimidate that figure in the dark. Their attention was not diverted by Dmo Xian. They were all placed on Yiqing Luo, their faces filled with astonishment. What camouflage? He's that powerful? This wasn't just because she knew that Wu Fuer was afraid of her. Even they couldn't tell that it was a smokescreen. Yiqing Luo smiled, and when she lowered her eyes, her slender fingers gently caressed the cherry blossom totem on her wrist. His smile was a little unfathomable. On the other side, Old Man Song, who had received the warning from Di Guang, expressed his bitterness. He should have directly flown back into the Azure Dew bracelet. Why was he so nosy that he had to hide in his room in his spiritual body form to watch the show? As a matter of fact, Di Zun found out. Furthermore, he looked at Di Zun's eyes. He seemed to be very unhappy about the cooperation he had given Luo Yu. Was she blaming him for not stopping Luo Bingyao from fooling around? Instead, he was fooling around with her? Could he be blamed for this? What could he do? He was in despair, all right. Did he look like someone who could reject Luo Yu? Did Luo Yu look like someone who would give up after being rejected? If it was the Overlord himself, could he reject Luo Yu? Chapter 4184. Yes, the so-called camouflage. But she had secretly borrowed the strength of Old Man Song. After losing her profound energy, the divine weapon she carried could not be activated without the infusion of profound energy. Even the Azure Dew bracelet could not be activated. Only Old Man Song and the Azure Dew bracelet could move freely. Therefore, Yiqing Luo made use of Wu Fuer's fear of her. When Wu Fuer launched an attack, Old Man Yutsong appeared and sent him flying. Old Man Song was just a spiritual existence. Basically, he could not attract anyone's attention, especially Wu Fuer, who was terrified. Not to mention, she could not identify where the power to counter her came from. But she did not expect Dmo Xian to see that it was Old Man Song who was secretly helping her. Old Lai asked a few more questions. Yiqing Luo had just dealt with Wu Fuer and her body was already exhausted. In a daze, he heard Dmo Xian chasing the few of them out. Shortly after, the man climbed onto the bed. His strong arms pulled her body into his embrace. Lying on the man's broad chest, her nose was filled with the man's elegant sandalwood scent. It was a soothing scent, made her fall into a deep sleep. Inside the dark palace, the surroundings were filled with black qi and yin qi. Several figures in black cloaks stood respectfully on both sides of the hall. And in the middle was a tall figure half kneeling on the ground. That person was also covered from head to toe in a black robe, and his face could not be seen clearly. In front of them, it was a black curtain. The curtain fluttered lightly, like black smoke rippling. It rippled with an invisible and treacherous chill. The few of them couldn't help but shiver under the cold. Finally willing to come back? Behind the black curtain came a cool, cold voice without any warmth. That voice made one's scalp tingle. The black-robed man who was half kneeling on the ground knelt even lower, his forehead touching his head. His voice trembled. "Moss Master, you still know that I am your master?" The cold voice sneered. The tone was filled with a dangerous aura. The person kneeling on the ground trembled and said with a trembling voice, "This disciple doesn't dare." As soon as the black-robed man finished speaking, The air seemed to be filled with a cold glint. All of a sudden, a sharp force rushed down. The black-robed man didn't even have time to scream before he was sent flying by the force. He smashed into the wall and vomited blood. The black-robed man's body landed heavily on the ground again. The black-robed man did not stop at all. He forced his swaying body to kneel on the ground again. A large mouthful of blood gushed out from his mouth. His mouth was still saying, "Your disciple doesn't dare. Your disciple doesn't dare. Why wouldn't you dare?" The cold voice sounded like an Azura from hell. "I know I was wrong." The black-robed man curled up and begged for mercy in a low voice. The gloomy voice sneered a few times. Suddenly, she heard that cold and gloomy voice with a hint of malice. "You like her?" The back of the black-robed man stiffened. He quickly raised his head and said, "Master, your disciple didn't? The cold voice sneered. His tone was full of ridicule. "You disobeyed my orders and secretly sent her a message. That's called didn't?" The eyes under the black robe revealed a horrified expression. Chapter 4185. Heh. When that cold voice chuckled, the entire person, even the pores, exuded a chill. Not going to quibble anymore. Master is so resourceful. No matter how this disciple quibbles, I can't hide it from Master. The black-robed person's voice trembled. This disciple is willing to accept the punishment. There's no need to accept the punishment. The cold voice sounded cold. After all your actions have become the key to help this seat achieve my goal. The black-robed person's body trembled, her face turned pale. In his heart, thinking of himself these few times, whether it was meeting her privately, or wanting to take her away, it would turn the matter, into a series of things which were pushed by him. It was no wonder she was unwilling to believe him. In his heart, no matter how much indignation, he also didn't dare to express any opinion. He also didn't dare to follow Master's words, act obedient to seek favor. This seat's good disciple. The cold voice sighed faintly. Want to get her? The black-robed person's fingers suddenly curled up. Master. He was vigilant in his heart. He wanted to plead for her. Once Master had his eyes on her, she would not be able to escape. But the words begging for mercy were at the tip of his tongue. But when he met that pair of treacherous cold eyes behind the black curtain, he stiffly dared not to open his mouth. The cold voice laughed in a low voice. This seat's good disciple, don't forget. That red clear pavilion's pavilion lord also admires her. An overlord, a red clear pavilion's pavilion lord. Do you think, just based on you, can get the beauty back? Suddenly his tone abruptly increased. Just answer, do you want or not? The black-robed person's heart instantly jumped. Yes. He almost blurted out. There was no room for regret. You are this seat's most beloved disciple. Whatever you want, this seat will naturally get it for you. That cold and gloomy voice cackled. Obviously, the words sounded like concern for the black-robed person. However, his tone was enough to make one tremble with fear. Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo slowly opened her eyes in the midst of sleepiness. The man was no longer by her side. She lazily stretched out a hand. The position beside him was also ice-cold. Come to think of it, the man must have accompanied her until she fell into a deep sleep, then left. Yiqing Luo stretched herself. His whole body was still limp, and he couldn't muster up any strength. In the past few days, he even needed someone to serve him 3 meals a day. She was already used to it. His heart would no longer be like before, constantly wondering when he would be able to regain his former strength. She was anxious. The people around her were actually more anxious than she was. These few days, Yiqing Luo had also understood a little from Old Man Song. Her body had become like this. It was probably when the barbaric Bloodbone King was forcefully occupying her body. The force that had forcefully entered her body had blocked a certain place in her profound heart jade. That was why he temporarily lost his strength. He was unable to circulate his profound heart jade. After all, it was related to the cultivation of one's profound strength, as well as the circulation of one's profound jade heart. Before I can find the blockage. However, he did not dare to act rashly. All he could do was find out where the blockage was. Then he would unblock the blockage. Only then could he recover his strength. Now that things had come to this, Yiqing Luo could only wait patiently. This kind of matter couldn't be rushed. Roar, roar. Suddenly something furry rubbed against her feet. Immediately following that, a white furry little head popped out from the blanket. Chapter 4186. Yiqing Luo stretched out her hand. Chi-Chi's head was placed in her palm. Roar, roar. Chi-Chi whimpered softly, as though it was acting coquettishly. Yiqing Luo carried the little one in her arms as her slender fingers caressed its little head. How is it? Did you discover anything? Chi-Chi squinted its tiger eyes with a comfortable and joyful expression, as its soft voice sounded like a child. Chi-Chi listened to Master's arrangements and went over to Wu Fu Er's side. It raised its neck and spread its limbs wide, revealing its white belly. Just as Master had guessed, Hall leader Wu Yan bribed the female disciple on guard and secretly went to the dungeon to see Wu Fu Er. Yiqing Luo caressed Chi-Chi's soft belly as her eyes narrowed. She specially asked Chi-Chi to keep an eye on Wu Fu Er secretly. It was to find out who was the person behind Wu Fu Er. Everything was as she had guessed. Hall Master Wu Yan should have led Wu Fu Er to seek refuge with other forces, against the Imperial Palace and against her. For now, Yiqing Luo's mind was only filled with the 3 words secluded palace. After all, if it was other forces, even if they had any opinions about her, in front of DMO Xian, they wouldn't dare to be so unbridled. Did you hear what they said? Yiqing Luo asked. Chi-Chi flipped over again. Hall Master Wu Yan said, secluded palace will definitely save Wu Fu Er and leave Linglong Palace. He also said that they have already sent news and can take action immediately. It was indeed the secluded palace. It was really a force that refused to leave. Why was it always on her? And this action, what action was it referring to? Secluded palace. They had failed several times, and their losses were considered heavy. Now they were going to take action again? What new tricks did they come up with this time? Or, what trump card did they have for sure? Yiqing Luo subconsciously thought of herself. The one who had lost her profound energy. Could it be that? The collaboration with Old Man Song to deal with Wu Fu Er had not fooled the other party? Yiqing Luo decided to inform DMO Xian about this matter first. Yiqing Luo felt that with DMO Xian by her side, anything could be easily solved. During this period of time when he lost his power, she would just rely on her man. She tapped Chi-Chi's head lightly. Go and see what Xian is doing. If he's free, ask him to come over. Chi-Chi rubbed against her palm for a long time before she jumped down from the bed with her tail raised and jumped out of the window. Chi-Chi's shadow disappeared from the room. A clear and majestic voice came from outside the door. Madam D. Yiqing Luo propped herself up as her gaze swept towards the room door, responding softly. Patriarch Qiao, is anything the matter? Patriarch Qiao paused at the door. The Overlord asked me to invite you to the front hall. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Xian? What did she want me to do in the front room? It seems that because of the mysterious Lady of Yama's matter, Hall Master Wu Yan incited many female disciples of the Linglong Palace in an attempt to avenge the Linglong Palace master. Patriarch Qiao's tone was a little helpless. Those female disciples have been incited to the point that they have lost their minds. They don't care about the Overlord's existence at all. When Yiqing Luo heard that, her expression changed slightly. How does Xian intend to handle this? Chapter 4187. This time it was noisy. It was probably not just Hall leader Wu Yan's instigation. Not to mention the various superpowers that were eyeing them covetously from behind. Everyone wanted to share the burden of the Linglong Palace. After all, an existence like the Dizun would never stay in the land for too long. Hence, it was impossible for him to be interested in the Linglong Palace. Thus, the Linglong Palace would eventually fall into the hands of the various major powers of the Earth realm. During this period of time, if it wasn't for DMO Xian's suppression, the Earth domain had probably already forgotten about the incident where they were nearly wiped out by the gloomy palace during the auction of the Earth domain. Now, Was he finally unable to restrain himself? The overlord only asked me to invite Madame D over. As for the specific solution, I guess we'll have to wait for Madame D to arrive and discuss it with her. Patriarch Qiao said. Did he need to invite her to discuss it? Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips slightly as her gaze was fixed on the door as she called out. Then will family patriarch Qiao please wait for me outside for a moment? I'll pack up and come out. Yes. Patriarch Qiao's expression didn't change much. Hearing this reply, Yi Qingluo's eyes suddenly darkened. His movement of getting up also gradually slowed down. She leaned against the soft pillow, her fingers subconsciously caressing the profound phoenix ring. However, now that he had lost his dark force, he couldn't activate the connection between the Netherworld Phoenix ring and the Netherworld Dragon ring. She pursed her lips and looked at the door again. Old Man Song. She concentrated and shouted in her heart. Old Man Song's voice sounded in his mind. What's wrong? Something has happened. Her expression was grave. Have you sensed Beiyuan and Langli Xian's auras? Generally speaking, if DMO Xian was not in the courtyard, he would definitely leave Tang Beiyuan and Langli Xian in the courtyard. However, ever since Patriarch Qiao appeared, he had not heard of the two men. Old Man Song's spiritual body immediately floated out and circled around the room. No. As soon as he finished speaking, he seemed to have sensed something, and his expression immediately changed. Not good. I can sense two very weak auras outside the courtyard. They seem to be the auras of those two guards. Weak. Beiyuan and Langli Xian had already been restrained. This was bad. Girl, outside the door. Old Man Song sensed the person outside through the door. Go and find Venerable Sovereign. Chi-Chi has already gone. Yi Qingluo's expression congealed. We can only temporarily hold up the people outside the door. Wait for Xian to rush over first. He could only hope. When Chi-Chi rushed over to look for Xian, he was not busy. Otherwise Chi-Chi would obediently wait for Mo Xian to finish his work before passing on the message. Madam, are you not ready yet? Outside the door, Patriarch Qiao's voice suddenly sounded again. There was a different emotion in his tone. Yi Qingluo's eyes flickered slightly as she took a look at Old Man Song and whispered, I'll have to trouble Patriarch Qiao to wait a little longer. I don't know where Xian has thrown my outer robe. Outside the door, there were several breaths of silence. Then the door was pushed open. Madam D, let me help you look for him. There's a difference between men and women. After all, Lord Qiao is my friend Qiao Yinyan's father. It's not right for him to enter my room alone. Yi Qingluo hurriedly stopped him. However, Patriarch Qiao's footsteps did not stop there. After pushing the door open, he directly walked in. At the same time, Old Man Song's figure speedily returned into the azure dew bracelet. Chapter 4188. When he saw that there was no movement on the bed, that pair of dark eyes flashed with a complicated light. Is this what Deforan meant by looking for the outer robe? The young girl curled up on the bed. Her slender and soft body leaned against the soft pillow. It accentuated the girl's soft and beautiful figure. Her hair cascaded down like a waterfall. The bedding covered the girl's waist. When the young girl raised her eyes to meet his gaze, that pair of eyes that were like the most flawless jade in the world crashed into his heart like colored glass. It didn't look like he was looking for a robe. It could almost be said that from the moment she said she wanted to pack up and follow him to see Mo Xian, she just stayed on the bed, not moving at all. Obviously, right from the start, she had no intention of following him to meet Mo Xian. Yi Qingluo exchanged glances with the other party for several breaths and couldn't help but frown. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but when the other party's gaze landed on her, she felt as if she was dreaming. There was an obvious change in the expression in the other party's eyes. She hid the deep thoughts in her eyes and leaned lazily against the headboard. She deliberately relaxed her voice and said lazily, I'm really sorry to have made Master Qiao come all the way here for nothing. I might have caught a cold when I was sleeping just now, and now I'm in a coma. I'm afraid I can't go with you to see Xian. As she spoke, she raised her hand and rubbed her forehead. Where are you feeling unwell? The man blurted out almost instinctively. The urgency and concern in his tone made Yiqing Luo raise her brows. As if sensing that his emotions were not right, the man coughed softly and straightened his attitude. He pretended to be calm and said, "I'm sure His Majesty will be very worried if he knows that Madame D isn't feeling well. So, may I trouble Patriarch Qiao to inform Xian about this?" Yiqing Luo's lips twitched as she put on an unwell and weak look. It made the other party's gaze fixated on her even more intensely. Just as Yiqing Luo was about to ask them to leave, that person suddenly walked over with large strides. With a few steps, he was already standing beside the bed. Yiqing Luo looked up. She looked into the pair of dark and repressed eyes. Patriarch Qiao would never look at her with such a gaze. "When did you find out?" He lowered his head and quietly looked at her. His eyes were dark and he had no intention of hiding it. Yiqing Luo played dumb. "What? When did you see that I'm not the Qiao family head?" The man didn't beat around the bush with her. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face slowly converged. It seemed that he did not intend to continue pretending. Yes, the person before him had the exact same face and voice as Qiao clan's patriarch. However, he was not the real Patriarch Qiao. How did he recognize me? It should be, from the very beginning. Because DMO Xian knew her current condition, so how could he possibly let family head Qiao invite her to the front hall for a discussion? Even if there was a need for discussion. Even then he would take the initiative to come to her room. Then she purposely probed. She had to tidy herself up again before meeting DMO Xian. If it was the real Qiao family head, he was naturally aware of her current situation. He knew that right now, she didn't even have the strength to tidy herself up. How could she possibly get off the bed alone and walk out of the room to meet DMO Xian? So, from that moment onwards she was certain. The person outside the door was not family head Qiao. She originally thought that she could drag on for a period of time, until DMO Xian rushed over. Chapter 4189. He directly admitted that he was impersonating Patriarch Qiao. This honesty made her not know how to drag the time. "From what I know, you don't know much about Patriarch Qiao. How did you tell?" He opened his mouth to ask again, his eyes burning as he stared at her face without blinking. This kind of gaze. Yiqing Luo vaguely felt that it looked familiar. It seemed as though she had seen this kind of gaze somewhere before. "Yiqing Luo, can I assume that? No matter what disguise I put on in front of you, you will still be able to recognize me?" He suddenly leaned downwards, getting closer to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as her slender brows creased. "You are Palace Lord of Secluded Palace." It's him. That person who impersonated DMO Xian. The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace. It's actually him again. Running over to impersonate Patriarch Qiao again. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and directly pressed against his chest, which was getting nearer. "You like to impersonate others so much?" The person who was recognized didn't panic at all. Instead he laughed lowly. His laughter carried a tinge of satisfaction. "As expected, you recognized me." It really was him. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed, unable to understand what the Palace Lord of Secluded Palace's strange laughter represented. "What do you want to do?" Yiqing Luo raised her eyes to look at him. He was still smiling as he looked at Yiqing Luo's face. His gaze was deep and filled with possessiveness. "Follow me." Yiqing Luo's body stiffened slightly as she was on high alert. The expression on her face maintained a languid elegance. "To where?" "To where you should go," he replied in a deep voice. His voice was no longer that deep and dignified Patriarch Qiao's voice, but belonged to him a slightly hoarse voice. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes twitched acutely. His words were no longer, "I'll bring you away," but "to where you should go." This change made Yiqing Luo's expression change slightly. "It's that person who asked you to come over?" He gave a gentle smile as he slowly bent down, placing both hands on her shoulders. "Yiqing Luo, I won't let you escape again, follow me." As he said that, his hand had already embraced her petite body. Originally it was just a light touch. But as soon as he touched it, he suddenly realized that the person in his arms had no intention of struggling at all. She was very obedient. He couldn't help but lower his head to take a few more glances. He tried to pick her up. Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace. Yiqing Luo suddenly cried out as she raised her hand and pressed against his arm. The force was very light. He paused and did not continue. The girl's eyes were calm. She looked up at him from such a close distance. Xian is not far away. Are you sure you can take me away safely? He shook his head. His gaze was deep and gentle. You're willing to leave with me. The meaning is different. That gaze made Yiqing Luo extremely disgusted. To be honest, until now she couldn't believe it. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace said that he liked her. He leaned over slightly and leaned towards Yiqing Luo's ear. His voice was clear and soothing, very pleasant to listen to. But the words that came out of his mouth made Yiqing Luo's face turn pale bit by bit. He said, "That bunch of brothers of yours who came all the way from Nirvana realm, whether or not have the right to meet you again, will depend on your performance." Seeing Yiqing Luo's entire body stiffening, her face pale and her eyes looking at him in astonishment. Chapter 4190. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. What do you mean? The smile at the corner of the man's mouth gradually widened. It means exactly what it says. Yiqing Luo suddenly raised her hand and tugged the man's collar. What did you do to them? However, the hand that was about to reach out fell powerlessly to the ground. She was agitated and angry. Her body was getting weaker and weaker. The man's eyes drooped as he looked at the hand on the side of the bed, and the young lady's gloomy, pale and powerless face. What's the matter with you? He could tell that something was wrong with Yiqing Luo, wearing Patriarch Qiao's face, revealing that kind of worried and obviously adoring gaze towards her. This indeed made Yiqing Luo feel disgusted, adding on to the fact that she was worried about her own bunch of brothers. How could Yiqing Luo possibly answer the man's question? She pursed her lips tightly as she turned her head to avoid the man's outstretched hand, repeating word by word. What on earth did you do to them? What on earth do you want? The man's hand landed on empty air. He wasn't annoyed nor did he have the intention to force her. He slowly retracted his hand and gazed deeply at her face as his voice became gentle. I can guarantee that their choice is absolutely safe. But their life and death is in your hands. How can I believe you? Yiqing Luo suppressed the fear and uneasiness in her heart as she forced herself to calm down as she asked. There were still a few days before the 3-month appointment with her brothers. They shouldn't be able to reach the Earth realm from Nirvana realm so quickly. After all, it was a place that spanned across 2 realms. This must be. He intentionally lied to her, trying to lure her into his trap. I won't lie to you. The man replied softly as his thin lips pressed against her ear. Moreover, you don't have the right to doubt, isn't it? Yiqing Luo's slender fingers suddenly clenched tightly as the expression on her face turned gloomy. Yes. She had no doubts, no right to choose. Even if she told herself over and over again in her heart. Her brothers didn't come to the Earth realm. But what if? She couldn't afford to gamble on this. She couldn't admit the consequences of this what if. I don't have much time. You also know that I don't have any power in the Palace of Darkness. He was very frank. With the face of Qiao family's master, he smiled gently and affectionately. If you follow me obediently, I can guarantee the safety of your brothers. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered slightly as she raised her head slightly. Her cold eyes met with the man's without blinking. Then he slowly said word by word, I will go with you. The corners of the man's mouth raised into a big smile. He said in a tone as if he was teasing a pet, That's a good girl. He raised his hand and gently rubbed the girl's head. When his palm came into contact with Dao Qi's body, Dao Qi's eyes widened. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill down her spine. She held back and looked at him. Aren't we leaving? Why aren't you leaving? The man chuckled softly and slowly straightened his body. He let go of her touch. One day you will accept my touch. Yiqing Luo. She would never be able to accept it for the rest of her life. The man stood up straight and turned around. Let's go. Yiqing Luo gripped the bedding tightly. Her weak body made her unable to get down from the bed. But she didn't want the man to touch her. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she used her consciousness to summon Xian Gui. Chapter 4191. He sensed an unusual movement. The man who was walking in front turned his head back alertly when he saw that jade-colored object. A huge tortoise, a sturdy and flickering tortoise shell. And its body was coiled with something that looked like a snake or dragon, sticking out its scarlet tongue. That pair of tiny eyes even exuded a cold and sinister aura. This palace lord immediately took a step back as he stared at Black Tortoise vigilantly. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as her figure moved slightly, and sat on top of the tortoise shell. After she sat properly, her face was even paler than before. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Her breathing was also slightly panting, as though she was out of stamina. Palace Lord walked towards her as his brows creased tightly as he asked in a probing manner, "Is your body unwell?" Yiqing Luo's performance made one suspect if something had happened to her. That look was totally different from the flamboyant one she had seen previously. Even when they used her brothers to threaten her, she didn't show much of a reaction. Thinking of this, Palace Lord's eyes were filled with concern as he half squatted down and was about to check Yiqing Luo's pulse. Yiqing Luo only patted Black Tortoise's tortoise shell as she expressionlessly avoided Palace Lord's hand. "Xiangui, let's go." After that, she slowly raised her head as she shot a glance at Palace Lord indifferently. "What has it got to do with you if I'm not feeling well? Will you let me continue to rest in bed because of this?" Palace Lord's throat tightened as he met Yiqing Luo's ridiculing gaze. Unable to say a single word of rebuttal, he indeed wouldn't let Yiqing Luo continue to rest. If Yiqing Luo replied in this way, that would be tacitly admitting the fact that she was really not feeling well. If Yiqing Luo in this state followed him back to Palace Lord's, would there really be no other effects? His mind was in a whirl. The young lady had already been carried out of the room by Black Tortoise. He quickly chased up and blocked in front of the young lady. The young lady raised her head as she looked at him with a smile, which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord's emotions were fluctuating as he looked at the young lady's ridiculing gaze as his throat tightened. He was clearly worried that it would be unsafe and uncomfortable for the girl to sit on the Black Tortoise. But when his arm reached the girl's shoulder, the words that were on the tip of his tongue became, "Black Tortoise is too big of a target, will be discovered. I'll carry you." Yiqing Luo's eyes were calm. She raised her hand and blocked his outstretched hand. Her emotions were very indifferent. "Xiangui can keep up with you." He had already lost count of how many times he had been rejected by the young lady. But every time, his heart would feel a sharp pain as if it was being torn apart. Something seemed to be hammering on his chest. Under the young girl's indifferent gaze, his stiff hands slowly retracted. He pursed his lips and did not speak again. He turned around and vanished into thin air. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her slender fingers tightened. "Xiangui, keep up." No matter what, she had to make this trip. He summoned Xiangui first. If anything urgent happened, Xiangui's turtle shell would be able to handle it for some time. There was also Old Man Song. At the very least, he could buy some time. Even if Chi didn't manage to find Dmo Xian in time, Tang Beiyuan and Lang Li Xian hadn't appeared for a long time, which would attract Dmo Xian's attention. She only needed to wait for Dmo Xian to rush over. Then there wouldn't be much of a problem. But sometimes, no matter how perfect and precise her calculations were, but when things happened. Chapter 4192. The boundary between Earth Realm and Heaven Realm. A slender figure stood on the peak of the mountain, facing the wind. A black dress, under the strong wind, blew like a thick black fog, encircling that person's body. And behind that person, stood two respectful ladies dressed in lotus green attire. "Miss Bai, do you think Yiqing Luo will really come?" One of the ladies with a vicious expression carefully probed. This was obviously a trap. Yiqing Luo was such an intelligent person. Would she really come? In front, the slender figure's red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful but extremely distorted face surfaced a vicious expression. Yes, she will definitely come. The two ladies in lotus green attire exchanged glances. The other amiable-looking lady smiled. If Miss Bai says she will come, then Yiqing Luo will definitely come. Let's just wait patiently. That scoundrel has always been putting on airs, in order to let others say that she values relationships and righteousness. How could she not come? The slender figure's voice was very pleasant, but the tone was so cold that it made one's scalp go numb. Isn't she relying on the overlord? This time round, let's see how she is going to escape from Miss Bai's palm. The vicious-looking lady sneered. The slender figure who was addressed as Miss Bai's smile turned even colder, as her gaze slowly fell onto the 10 over people who were hung on the cliff, covered with injuries. Those people? Weren't they the World Mercenary Group's people? Sensing the slender figure's gaze, the young man who was hung upside down, his blue eyes were filled with an icy cold glint, shooting straight towards her. What are you staring at? The vicious-looking lady raised her profound energy, as she struck a palm strike towards that person. The young man's throat felt a fishy sweetness, as blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The other amiable-looking lady stopped her. Don't kill them, these are all tools to restrain Yiqing Luo. Her words paused for a moment, as she continued. Letting them die now. How can it be as delightful as torturing them bit by bit in front of Yiqing Luo? Obviously, the lady was smiling, but the words that came out from her mouth made one tremble in fear. The three women looked at each other and burst into laughter at the same time. The laughter was sharp and piercing. The dozen or so people hanging at the edge of the cliff all looked angry, but they couldn't struggle at all. Captain, what should we do? The wounded youths whispered. Blue-eyed youngster Long Yunjan's expression was icy cold as his eyes were filled with flames. We must believe in Qing Luo. Yes, we must believe in Luo. We will all be safe. The young girl beside him had a cold expression, but her words were filled with warmth and intimidating power. No matter how low their repeated voices were, they were still clearly heard by the slender figure at the edge of the mountain peak. The woman's eyes immediately became even more ruthless. He swung his arm. A long, soft whip appeared in her hand. She raised her whip and flung it towards the 10 over people hanging on the edge of the cliff. Yiqing Luo! Yiqing Luo! Yiqing Luo! Did you treat Yiqing Luo as a god? Do you think she can save you just because she's here? Stop dreaming. The whip was raised, as it streaked across the air, giving out a swish-swish sound. A wisp of black profound energy encircled the whip. This whip landed. Chapter 4193. The 10 over people's faces instantly turned pale. When Long Yunjan saw that soft whip descending, his body suddenly moved. Making use of the rope which was hanging him, he swung his body horizontally in front of those 10 over people. He attempted to use his own body to block the descending whip. His action made the young men and ladies' expressions changed as they cried out in shock. Group leader. Just as the soft whip was descending, suddenly, a hurricane swept across. The air was filled with strong profound energy. Following that, they saw that soft whip which was about to land on Long Yunjan's body was flung away by the strong energy. Immediately following that, they heard a lady's shocked cry and miserable shriek. The 10 over people looked over in shock. They saw that black-robed slender lady who was standing at the side of the high peak was directly flung out, as she fell heavily onto the ground. There was no trace of the high and mighty look which she had earlier. The 10 over people's gazes suddenly lit up. Their gazes swiftly moved around the surroundings. Qing Luo was here. Qing Luo was here. The same thought appeared in everyone's mind. To them, the only person who would appear in time to save them was only Yiqing Luo alone. Not only them were thinking this way. The lady who was flung out by the strong wind at the high peak also had the same thought. Under the support of two ladies dressed in lotus green robes, the slender figure stood up from the ground in a disheveled state. Her gaze was like a torch as she stared at the direction where the energy had come from. But a low and deep voice, extremely calm and dignified. When did this palace lord allow you to take action against them? The gloomy and cold dignified voice instantly covered the entire air. Everything in the surroundings became cold and condensed. The slender figure suddenly froze as a glint of hatred flashed past her eyes. But very quickly, it was covered up by the charming expression on her face. The two ladies dressed in lotus green robes who were supporting her, on seeing the person, became extremely respectful as they bowed in fear and trepidation. Palace Lord. The profound waves rippled. A tall and slender figure slowly walked out. He was still wearing that face of Patriarch Qiao, but his entire temperament was emitting a sinister and powerful aura, totally different from Patriarch Qiao. There's no need to get angry, Palace Master. The slender figure spoke in a coquettish voice. Her young and beautiful face was filled with a flattering smile. Her smile and frown were both charming and enchanting. If it was an ordinary person, this smile could really make people fall head over heels for him. However, when the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her, his gaze didn't change at all. The slender figure seemed to be used to this and continued to smile. They are just a few insignificant tools. What's the harm in killing them? The eyes of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace turned cold, and his sleeves fluttered. The thick black yin-chi wrapped around the slender figure, and threw her to the ground again. The slender figure was thrown into confusion. It was accompanied by a cold and dignified voice. Bai Mei, are you questioning me? The slender figure, which was Bai Mei, fell to the ground in a sorry state. She curled up and trembled slightly. After hearing the threatening words of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, he couldn't help but shrink back and soften his voice. No, I don't dare, Palace Master. When the other two ladies saw this, they tacitly welcomed the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace while looking behind her. Didn't Palace Master bring Yiqing Luo here? Chapter 4194. Could it be that? Did the Palace Master fail? He wasn't able to bring Yiqing Luo over? Even if he captured Yiqing Luo's former brother, to use him as a tool, he wasn't able to make Yiqing Luo take the bait? Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder are looking for my mother? Suddenly, an extremely lazy voice sounded leisurely. Immediately following that, a blazing figure appeared in everyone's line of sight. The young lady was sitting on the back of a jade-green giant tortoise. Two snake-like and dragon-like things were resting on the young lady's legs. Just as the young lady opened her mouth, those two intertwined things suddenly raised their heads. Jade-green eyes, scarlet snake head, it made one shudder. The young lady was leaning lazily on the tortoise shell. Her jet-black hair was not tied up, looking slightly messy. However, this only served to further accentuate her pale face, which was devastatingly beautiful. Yiqing Luo. Those two ladies dressed in lotus green robes stared blankly at Yiqing Luo, as they almost blurted out Yiqing Luo's name. Their hearts were out of control as they started to jump nervously. This was fear emitted from their bones. Fear towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly. Her expression was lazy as her gaze swept past the both of them. She knew that Hall Head Wu Yan had joined the Nether Palace, but she had not expected that Third Elder had also joined the Nether Palace. All for the sake of fighting for the position of Linglong Palace Lord? If they knew the real use of the Linglong Palace Lord, would they put in so much effort just to become the Linglong Palace Lord? She scoffed lightly, with some ridicule. When the slender figure saw Yiqing Luo, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Amidst the excitement, it was mixed with resentment and hatred. New hatred and old hatred made her completely forget about the existence of the Palace Lord of the Nether Palace. Yiqing Luo, you're indeed here. Before she could say the word here, what came towards her was a thick austere aura. A gust of cold wind brushed past her. The young lady who was sitting on Black Tortoise's back had already passed her, charging forward. Even her peripheral vision had not landed on her. Yiqing Luo's expression was solemn. As Black Tortoise neared the edge of the peak, he saw a dozen people hanging at the edge of the cliff, their bodies riddled with scars. Her half-narrowed eyes were covered in a deep red flowing light, and she was like a bloodthirsty azura, cold and murderous. The young woman's aura suddenly burst forth. She got up and wanted to get off the Black Tortoise's back. Yiqing Luo. The Palace Lord's figure flashed, and in a blink of an eye, he stood right in front of Yiqing Luo. He stretched out his hand and stopped Yiqing Luo's body. Let go. Yiqing Luo's eyes were icy cold. The red light flashed and her murderous aura was extremely strong. I've said this before, if you listen to me obediently, nothing will happen to them. The palace lord of Abyss Palace had not retracted his hand, which was placed in front of Yiqing Luo. He could tell that there was something wrong with Yiqing Luo's current condition and body. Perhaps it was out of selfishness. He wanted to hide the fact that there was something wrong with the girl's body. So when he rushed over, he saw Bai Mei raising her whip, striking those companions whom Yiqing Luo cared about. He snatched the chance to stop Yiqing Luo. Because he was very clear. If he didn't stop them, Yiqing Luo would definitely strike. This strike, he didn't know if Yiqing Luo's body could take it or not. Furthermore, Yiqing Luo's unwell body would also be exposed. It was as if the gods were at work. So he struck out. Now, naturally he wouldn't let Yiqing Luo forcefully support her body to save those people who were unimportant to him. In his eyes. Chapter 4195. Yiqing Luo's eyes drooped as she swept a glance at the hand in front of her. Her eyes were dull, as though there was no trace of emotion. Immediately after, her pink lips curled slightly as she looked at him coldly with a smile which didn't look like a smile, ridiculing. So, what do you want to do? Tell me your motive directly. The palace lord's lips pursed tightly into a straight line. He tightened his fingers as the expression on his face changed slightly. But the hand in front of Yiqing Luo was not put down. Why? Didn't you want me to listen to you obediently? Then stop beating around the bush. Yiqing Luo only gave a ridiculing smile as her eyes were cold. You can waste time, but my brothers can't. The palace lord still didn't move. I can assure you of their safety. Yiqing Luo sneered. But I don't believe you. Yiqing Luo. The palace lord's expression sunk, as though he was angered. Yiqing Luo's expression remained unchanged as her eyes turned chilly. The aura which exploded around her was filled with alienation which made one unable to get close to her. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace could see it. Yiqing Luo was angry, because the palace lord had kidnapped those brothers whom she cared about. So she was angry. And she was extremely angry. Looking at the young lady's anger and the ridicule on her lips, the palace master of the Netherworld Palace found it hard to breathe. Palace lord, why do you need to talk terms with her? Hall Master Wu Yan saw that the palace lord of Abyss Palace's attitude towards Yiqing Luo was obviously not right as he immediately spoke out, half probing and half reminding. She's alone now, so as long as these people are still in our hands, we can do whatever we want. Her words had just ended. Then he felt an ice-cold chill coming from the front. Hall head Wu Yan trembled slightly as she met with the palace lord's icy cold eyes. Her heart skipped a beat. Why do you need to butt in on this palace lord's matters? The palace lord's dignified voice was filled with anger. The profound energy was majestic, like a sharp blade. Hall head Wu Yan gave a dull moan as his body flew out. His body fell to the ground and rolled in a circle. She propped herself up on the ground and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked at the palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace in horror. No matter how stupid she was, it could also be seen. This palace lord of Secluded Gloom Palace's intentions towards Yiqing Luo. For Yiqing Luo, he stopped Miss Bai from taking action against those 10 over people. He even hit young Miss Bai instead. Wasn't this obvious? Taking revenge for Yiqing Luo? Palace lord he actually liked Yiqing Luo. Moreover, their relationship was obviously not shallow. Wasn't Yiqing Luo the person whom Secluded Darkness Palace wanted to deal with? The third elder was also stunned by the scene before him. She glanced at the palace master of the Secluded Palace, then at the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall. She immediately spoke to ease the atmosphere. She went to the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and helped him up. She said, "The palace master has his own plans for what to do. We just need to follow his orders." Her words didn't get a look from the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. The third elder hurriedly supported the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall and retreated to one side. He tugged the hall master of the Wu Yan Hall, indicating for her not to open her mouth temporarily. His gaze seemed to be pointing at Bai Mei, who was standing by the side with her half-squinted eyes. Hall head Wu Yan understood his meaning as she fiercely wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Looking at that side, the palace lord of the Netherworld Palace was still talking to Yiqing Luo. But after receiving Yi Qingluo's expressionless reply, his expression turned extremely gloomy, but he was still suppressing his anger. Chapter 4196. Bai Mei sensed someone approaching and her eyes turned icy cold as she shot over. Hall Master Wu Yan clutched his chest in pain. His face was pale as he suppressed his voice. "Miss Bai, do you think? Palace Lord, he is he." Saying this, she pursed her lips intentionally as she hesitantly shut her mouth. Bai Mei's gaze turned even colder. Her vision looked towards the two entangled people as her red lips rose slightly. That young and beautiful face was distorted to the extreme. Her black robe fluttered without any wind. A thick black fog rolled up. On the other side, no matter how Yi Qingluo opened her mouth, the Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace had not moved from his spot, preventing Yi Qingluo from saving the 10 over people by the edge of the cliff. Looking at the pale-faced youngsters hanging by the edge, Yi Qingluo finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She suddenly took a step forward as her eyes were filled with an icy coldness. Her bare hands moved. Her fingertips covered the azure dew bracelet. Under the cover of her palms, she made use of Old Man Song's azure dew bracelet to release a burst of profound energy. Yi Qingluo immediately used the azure dew bracelet to gather the profound energy and turned it into a sharp blade, heading towards the Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace. She had no intention to be lenient. Her expression was cold and icy cold. The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace originally had no intention to dodge. But when he met with Yi Qingluo's vibrant and captivating eyes, he understood. If he didn't dodge, this attack would definitely be aimed at his face, and it would come crashing down. There would be no hesitation at all. She had hardened her heart to kill him. His heart at this moment turned cold. The cold wind landed on his face. The Palace Lord of Ethereal Palace's figure swiftly turned as he avoided the sharp wind blade. Immediately following that, he retreated and blocked the path in front of Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo's body rolled, and her soft petite body slid down from Black Tortoise's back as she rolled onto the ground. The ground was filled with dead wood and grass. It was just a light stroke, but a few bright red wounds appeared on her fair and tender skin. She ignored it. She turned over and sat on the ground as she looked at Black Tortoise. "Xiangui, bring him back." Xiangui shook his huge head. The snake dragon-like creature on her back stared at her with 2 pairs of scarlet eyes. Her eyes were filled with worry. Yi Qingluo shook her head at it. "I'm fine, you go ahead." Xiangui hesitated for a moment, but still obeyed Yi Qingluo's command and rushed to the edge of the cliff. In the meantime, in the instant when the young girl shot out that profound energy, forcing the palace master of the Netherworld Palace to dodge to the side, his expression changed drastically. His eyes instantly congealed towards Yi Qingluo's direction. No, that's not right. This wasn't Yi Qingluo's presence. The profound energy which attacked him was absolutely not the energy which Yi Qingluo released. Could it be Venerable Sovereign? As soon as this thought flashed through his mind, he dispelled it. No, this was not the aura of a venerable sovereign. Instead, it was an extremely unfamiliar aura that he had never come into contact with before. Who could it be? In his heart, hundreds and thousands of thoughts were running through his head. His gaze suddenly narrowed. When he saw the girl rolling down from the Black Tortoise's back, he felt a chill run down his spine. He subconsciously rushed over and reached out his hand to help the girl up. But he only reached out halfway. He recalled that the young girl didn't like his touch. His hand froze in midair. What made him astonished was, Yi Qingluo had no intention to avoid him. Or rather, Yi Qingluo raised her head and looked at him coldly, her eyes filled with rejection. Chapter 4197. The Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace suddenly seemed to have thought of something. His deep and cold pupils suddenly constricted. Perhaps it was to test if his thinking was right or not. He suddenly stretched out both hands and placed it on the young lady's shoulder. Under his palms, the young lady's soft body had obviously stiffened. Following that, her icy cold eyes stared at him emotionlessly. She didn't evade. The Palace Lord's brows creased slightly as his palm slid down once again, directly pressing on the young lady's back. His other hand, went around the young lady's waist, with a little force. Then he carried the young lady in his arms. It was effortless. The lady in his arms had no intention to evade. Instead, after she was brought into his arms, her body leaned against him softly. The palace lord's pupils contracted as his chest started to undulate due to nervousness. Yiqing Luo, have you? He lowered his voice and said the remaining half of the sentence in a very low and deep voice. I lost my profound energy. If it was Yiqing Luo, when she saw those brothers hanging on the edge of the cliff, she would definitely fly over to save them. He didn't want his battle pets to go and bring his brothers up. Furthermore, if it was Yiqing Luo, when he stopped her from saving those youngsters, she would directly make a move. When Yiqing Luo made a move, that burst of energy was definitely not her presence. So, seeing Yiqing Luo rolling down from Black Tortoise's back without any intention to stand up, he suddenly understood. What was the reason for Yiqing Luo's series of actions, which was extremely strange? As expected, the young lady who was forcefully hugged by him turned stiff after she heard what he said. That pair of enchanting eyes that were originally covered with frost was now even more gloomy. Her face was covered with frost. Then, what does the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace want to do to me? Yiqing Luo didn't deny it, as her indifferent tone seemed as though she wasn't talking about her own matters. The Palace Lord's arms suddenly tightened. What kind of person do you think I am? His tone was full of bitterness and some suppressed forbearance. Yiqing Luo only curled her lips in disdain. Haven't the Palace of Darkness always wanted to kill me? No, to put it more accurately, the Palace of Darkness had always wanted to get me. This is a good opportunity. Are you an idiot? The man's suppressed tone revealed a hint of anger. He hung his head. Her overly long black hair spilled down a little and hung on Yiqing Luo's face. He felt a little itchy. Warm air blew towards Yiqing Luo's ears. It was different from Dmo Xian's weak and flushed face when they were in close proximity. Her body tensed up even more. It was as if all the hairs on his body were standing on end. Her entire body was filled with rejection of his approach. The Palace Lord of Abyss Palace felt even more bitter in his heart as he hugged Yiqing Luo's hands, almost wanting to rub her into his body. Knowing that you're in danger now, why did you still follow me? The suppressed anger reverberated in her ears. When Yiqing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out loud. Her long and narrow eyes raised slightly as she looked at him with a ridiculing smile. You're concerned about me? She was obviously smiling, but the words that came out of her mouth were filled with ridicule. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace, do you know that when you ask this question, it's very sarcastic? She felt that this Palace Lord of Abyss Palace really had a problem with his brain. Chapter 4198. He made it sound as if he really loved her deeply, becoming a whore and still wanting to erect a chastity memorial? She felt that this analogy was very suitable for the secluded palace. Right from the start, using the World Group's brothers to threaten her. Now he put on a concerned attitude, berating her angrily why she had to come. Wasn't it contradictory? Wasn't it ironic? Did he treat everyone as fools? Yiqing Luo, must you misinterpret my meaning? The Palace Lord of Secluded Palace lowered his head as his extremely black eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo's face. This was the first time he used this angle to look at Yiqing Luo. The petite body in his arms was very warm and soft. It was like soft cotton, with the fragrance of a young girl. He couldn't bear to let go of her, even though the young lady's body was tensed up and her expression was icy cold. Every single time their eyes met, the young lady's icy cold gaze, as though it could shoot through a person. He totally couldn't feel any of the warmth and sweetness she had when she faced Dmo Xian. But even so, his heart was full of contentment. He had dreamt of this scene countless of times in the deep dark night. Today his dream had finally come true. He couldn't bear to let go. Even if he incurred the young lady's disgust, he couldn't bear to let go. In his mind, he recalled what his master said to him. Master said, loving someone isn't it to get her? If you can't get her, then what's the point of this love? Master said. So what if you can't get her heart? To be able to hold her in your arms, to let her accompany you, to let her belong to you alone. Isn't that enough? Initially, he couldn't understand his master's words. Now, when he held her in his arms, that satisfied feeling in his heart, he finally understood the true meaning behind his master's words. The expression on his face changed slightly. Looking at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it revealed some treacherous and chilly greed. This gaze and the sudden change in his aura made Yiqing Luo's heart tighten. There seemed to be something. Unknowingly, there was a change. Just as the two of them were exchanging glances, suppressing each other's aura, all of a sudden, a panicked shout could be heard. Ziqing. Goddess Tong. Hearing the overlapping calls, Yi Zichen frowned. Yiqing Luo used both hands to push away the palace lord's chest as she stuck her head out to look at the edge of the cliff. They saw. Xian Gui quickly rushed to the edge of the cliff and pulled them onto his back one by one. However, just as he pulled Long Yunjian onto his back, an irresistible and chilling attack was directed at Long Yunjian. Then, a black figure leaped into the air. His entire body was enveloped by the mysterious yin qi, and it was as if he was about to be devoured completely. The cold chill of the frost spread in the air. Long Yunjian dodged. That power did not stop at all. There was a loud bang sound. The edge of the cliff exploded. The few people who were still hanging on the edge of the cliff quickly fell down. It was extremely fast. Those people were all tied up by ropes. They were unable to concentrate and stabilize their falling bodies. The target of that attack had never been Long Yunjian. Instead, destroy the cliff. Fortunately, Xian Gui reacted quickly. Just as those people were falling, he swiftly bent down and charged towards them. Xian Gui moved. The black figure also followed closely behind. The overbearing dark yin qi shot out. Chapter 4199. Group Leader. Seeing that figure falling down, the crowd immediately cried out in panic. It was Long Yunjian. Just as that burst of overbearing profound yin qi landed, using his last bit of energy, he knocked the few of them aside, and was caught by Xian Gui in time. As for himself, he had forcefully endured all of the mysterious yin qi. Immediately following that, he lost all his energy, and was unable to maintain his figure as he directly fell down. Just at this moment, a figure speedily dashed over. The lady's slender figure, but when she dashed towards Long Yunjian, she hugged him tightly with both her hands. The lady's strength reduced Long Yunjian's falling speed. The lady clenched her teeth as she held on to her last breath, hugging Long Yunjian's totally exhausted body as she used all her strength to kick the cliff wall. Bam! Two entangled figures smashed heavily on the steep wall. The lady was below and the broken stones on the cliff wall had pierced deeply into her skin, causing numerous blood scars. The man's heavy strength was still pressing down on her body. This worsened the injury on the lady's back. This scene fell into the eyes of those the World Group mercenaries who were carried on Xian Gui's back as their hearts clenched tightly. A few cries of shock had already escaped from their mouths uncontrollably. Yiqing Luo turned her head around and looked towards the direction of the voice. She saw the scene of Tong Ziqing's lower body, which was already filled with blood. Bai Mei. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted as she clenched her teeth and squeezed out these two words. Her gaze was like a sharp blade as it shot towards the black-robed lady who was standing on the other side of the cliff. Her eyes were filled with chilliness, as though it could freeze one into ice. Bai Mei. Previously, because of a so-called young and beautiful face, she cooperated with the Palace of Darkness. In the end, she almost became the puppet of that human face of the Palace of Darkness. If it wasn't for Baisu's appearance, at that time, she would have been long dead. Hadn't Baisu sent her to the balance historian to be locked up? Now she actually ran out again, and chose to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness once again? Changed to a young and beautiful face again? Was this what it meant to be able to sell anything just for a face? Indeed, she didn't change even in death. Have you forgotten the lesson of the Dark Abyss Palace? Now, she was still causing trouble here and hurting her friend. The girl's eyes were as dark as a deep lake. Vaguely, a few streaks of red light could be seen moving about. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei giggled. Her young and beautiful face gave off an extremely twisted and awkward feeling when she laughed. His facial features seemed to be twisted together. However, Bai Mei was completely unaware of this. She lifted her hand and gently placed her slender fingers on her lower lip. She purposely curled her lips into a charming smile. His smile was filled with thick mockery. Yiqing Luo, do you know why I came back? Her voice was sharp and grating. Every word was like a sharp knife, cutting into people's eardrums. Yiqing Luo's gaze was icy cold. Did you think that the promise that secluded Darkness Palace gave you would really be honored? You're just a tool the Dark Palace used to disgust me. So what? Bai Mei totally didn't care about Yiqing Luo's words. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. As long as I can see you go to hell, even if I had to sell my soul, I'd be satisfied. Her smile became even crazier, as though she had experienced some huge stimulation. Chapter 4200. Bai Mei was still laughing. In order to save me, I didn't hesitate to hurt myself to save you. Ha ha ha, aren't you all silly? That sharp piercing laughter kept reverberating in the air. Yiqing Luo's expression didn't change at all. She looked coldly at Bai Mei as her eyes were chilly. For someone like you who has no heart, how would you understand? I'm afraid you've never thought about your sister. Yiqing Luo looked at her with ridicule. Your sister didn't hesitate to plead with a Xian to let you live, but you time and time again chose secluded palace to hurt your sister. My sister? Heh, is she even fit to be my sister? Mentioning Bai Su, Bai Mei's anger seemed to have been ignited as her anger surged. That slanderer was merely to torture me. If it wasn't for her. Bai Mei was so angry that her entire body was trembling. Intentionally putting on a look of deep sisterly love, just to maintain your own hypocrisy. After she finished howling this sentence, she seemed to have regained her senses. The smile on her face slowly turned chilly. I don't need to understand the so-called feelings you speak of. I only want your life. Her vision shot towards the side, towards the 10 over people on Xian Gui's back, who were in a sorry state. She wasn't flustered at all because Xian Gui had saved those people and lost the props to threaten Yiqing Luo. Just like that, he stood there unhurriedly. When she raised her hand, her black robe fluttered in the wind. In her palm, a black flute had appeared unknowingly. The flute was entirely black without any other colors. When she saw that black flute, Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. Surely not. As though to prove her thoughts, Bai Mei placed the flute by her lips. A sharp flute sound entered everyone's ears. The world group's young men and ladies suddenly turned pale as they laid on the ground, crying out in pain. As the flute's rhythm increased, they were in even more pain as their entire bodies started to tremble. Jinzi, Xiaoyi, Ruopan, Xiaoyu. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned red as she shouted out those people's names. But no one was able to give her any response. The sharp flute sound intertwined with her calls. Damn Abyss Palace. To actually use such a sinister move. Ha ha ha. Did you really think that I would let you rescue her so easily? Bai Mei looked at Yiqing Luo's expression as she laughed contentedly. This was the first time she had seen such an interesting expression on Yiqing Luo's face. What is this? The expression of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. She glared at Bai Mei fiercely. Bai Mei fiddled with the flute in her hand. The smile on her face was no longer as flattering as before. She glanced at the palace master of the Dark Palace playfully and said with a smile, "This is naturally the mission that the Venerable One secretly gave me." Hearing the word venerable, the gloomy face of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace changed slightly. He suppressed his anger. His eyelids drooped slightly as an apologetic expression appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo, this matter. I didn't know about it, I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo's scarlet eyes swept coldly towards him. His gaze was as cold as ice, without a trace of emotion. She gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Her brothers were groaning in pain beside her ears. She said word by word in an icy cold tone. Is there any meaning if you knew about it or not? Chapter 4201. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about how he was feeling. Her pair of icy cold eyes looked at him. Let go of me. She didn't move. But the pressure in her words made the palace lord of Seclusion Palace's hands on her loosen up. But he still hugged her as his tone lowered. You can't help them. If I let go, the matter of you losing your powers will be discovered by May. He pursed his lips tightly, and his eyes, which were as deep as a pond, were quiet and serene. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her smile was cold. Their 4 eyes met. The young lady's emotionless voice rang coldly. All these have nothing to do with you. His casual tone and his indifferent attitude, which was so alienated that it did not contain even the slightest bit of emotion. It had already pulled apart the distance between the two of them. The palace lord of Seclusion Palace could tell. The young lady no longer had any feelings towards him. Even those gratitude of him who had once saved her had also vanished into thin air. The current her. She hated him because he was from Seclusion Palace. Her brothers were also captured by him. Various thoughts were surging in his heart. The palace lord of Seclusion Palace knew that from now onwards, he had already been listed in Yiqing Luo's enemy list. This knowledge made the palace lord of Seclusion Palace's heart feel a dull piercing pain. I just don't want you to get hurt. His voice was hoarse and filled with extreme bitterness. As though he had used up all his energy, he used his throat to spit out a voice. My master doesn't trust me anymore. My original intention was to make use of the world group to bring you to my side. I had never thought of to hurt you. He totally didn't know that the world group's 10 over people had already been secretly tampered with. Bai Mei could use the flute to torture them. That flute's aura was sinister and cold, revealing an extremely familiar aura. He totally didn't need to think too much to tell. That was his master's flute. Master had passed the flute to Bai Mei, letting Bai Mei control the world group's members. Whereas he totally didn't know about it. This was already very obvious. His feelings towards Yiqing Luo had already made his master no longer trust him. But if he had to do it all over again, his choice would not change. However, he was a little confused. Like her master, a cold-blooded, heartless demon who killed without batting an eye. Why, after knowing that his heart had already been shaken, why would she do something like this? But he still spared his life. He didn't have time to think about this question. The person in his arms had already pressed her palm against his chest. It was so weak, but he could feel that she was pushing him. He could still hear the girl's bone-chilling voice. It doesn't matter if you want to or not. What's done is done. There's nothing to explain. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was startled. Regardless of whether he wanted to or not, he had already done it. That was right. He didn't want to hurt her. But right now, wasn't everything that he was doing hurting her? From the very beginning, the relationship between him and Yiqing Luo was the opposite. No matter how much he liked her, he would eventually hurt her. There was no place to hide from this. He suddenly broke into laughter. His laughter was filled with bitterness and relief. The hands that encircled her body slowly loosened. He laughed and staggered backward. The smile on his face was sometimes maniacal, sometimes it was light ridicule. His entire temperament had undergone a huge change. It was like he suddenly understood something. Chapter 4202. A gloomy and evil aura surrounded the palace master of Gloomy Palace. He laughed in a low voice. The expression on his face was already an unfathomable one. Looking at Yiqing Luo's gaze, it was no longer that kind of suppressed intense feelings. It was dark and gloomy, and at a glance, one would only feel incomparably gloomy. He shuddered. His robes fluttered in the wind. In the blink of an eye, he wore the face of Qiao family's patriarch and was shrouded in a black robe. He put on the black robe that belonged to him once again. He had completely blended into the darkness. The man slowly let go of the girl. His body fell to the ground as if he had no bones. She raised her head slightly and looked at the man in front of her, whose aura had surged but was clearly estranged from her. There wasn't much fluctuation in his eyes. It was just a glance before he quickly retracted his gaze. Then, he turned to look at his brothers, who were in agony because of Bai Mei's flute. Only when he looked at them, only when the young girl's eyes remained still did her emotions change. Her fingers stroked the azure dew bracelet, and she thought to herself, "Old man Song, can you save them?" She had lost her strength, and her body was still weak and powerless. It was impossible to save the World Group brothers. He could only rely on Old Man Song's secret help. "Girl Luo." Old Man Song's tone was a bit heavy. "I'm afraid this won't be easy." Yiqing Luo was stunned. "What's wrong?" Old Man Song. If it was before, this old man could still help and use Xian Gui as a smokescreen to save the children of the World Group. But he paused for a moment and asked, "Do you know what the flute in Bai Mei's hand is?" Yiqing Luo shook her head. Old Man Song sighed. "That's the flute of Dark Yin." Flute of Dark Yin? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She could tell. The long flute in Bai Mei's hand was filled with an extremely dense evil aura. When Bai Mei played the flute, the sinister aura became denser and denser. She roughly knew that this flute was given to Bai Mei by the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows as the last bargaining chip. But from Old Man Song's mouth he could roughly hear it. This flute was more troublesome than he had imagined. As you can imagine, the dark Yin flute is filled with dense Yin qi. Once it is blown, the Yin qi can completely bewitch a person's heart. Right now, Bai Mei's heart has been completely blinded by the evil energy. When she uses the dark Yin flute, she can only make those children who have already been implanted with the dark Yin flute feel the agony of the evil energy. Old Man Song explained with a serious tone. If the dark flute of shadows was used by someone else, the effects would definitely not be limited to this. In other words, the mastermind of the Tenyu Palace gave the dark Yin flute to Bai Mei, but did not teach her how to use it. It was just that by using the profound Yin qi of the dark Yin flute as a medium, it allowed the profound Yin qi to go berserk in the World Group's brothers' bodies, causing their bodies to be unable to withstand such a burden, causing them to be in excruciating pain. If it was someone else, it was very likely that the palace master of the Netherworld Palace had used the mystical Yin qi to control the female disciples of the Linglong Palace to kill each other. This was indeed very troublesome. He had to think of a way to purge the profound Yin qi from his brothers' bodies. If the mystical Yin qi stayed in the body for too long, it would be extremely painful. The damage to the human body was extremely serious. She still had to think of a way to snatch the dark Yin flute away, in case Bai Mei blew the dark Yin flute again, tormenting the World Group's brothers. Chapter 4203. Old Man Song said, "If I show myself, I'm afraid I'll attract the attention of the people behind Dark Palace." In other words, there was no other way. At the very most, he could only secretly help Yiqing Luo to cast a smokescreen, to cover up the fact that Yiqing Luo had lost her profound energy. "Yiqing Luo, what's wrong? Aren't you always arrogant and haughty? Now that you see the brothers you care about lying on the ground in pain, aren't you going to save them?" Bai Mei saw Yiqing Luo sitting on the ground with a gloomy expression, and the cold glint that flashed past the corner of her eyes made her shudder. In order to conceal the rising fear in the bottom of his heart, she suppressed the discomfort in her heart and continued, "Look at yourself now. Do you really deserve the title of Mistress of the Emperor Palace?" The girl sat motionlessly on the ground. This caused Bai Mei to feel a little suspicious, and a little fearful in her heart. Yiqing Luo was such a cunning and sinister person. Perhaps this was a deliberate plan of hers. She had crossed hands with Yiqing Luo so many times. Towards Yiqing Luo's habits, he more or less had some understanding. She didn't dare to easily probe what tricks Yiqing Luo was up to. "Bai Mei." Yiqing Luo slowly opened her mouth as her voice sounded inexplicably hoarse. She raised her eyes, and a faint red light flashed through them. This trace of red light caused Bai Mei's heart to tremble. She subconsciously stuttered, what? Yiqing Luo's pink lips twitched slightly as her smile was a little chilly. "In order to send me to hell, you didn't hesitate to sell your own soul. If Ah Xian were to find out that you've escaped from the Balance Historian's side and joined the secluded palace once again, what do you think he would think of you?" Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely calm. The corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile, but at the same time, it was just the right amount of light. Bai Mei's pupils constricted. The young and beautiful face was slightly twisted. How dare you mention His Majesty? Do you really think I'm afraid of you? This scoundrel. If not for her appearance, how could Dizun leave the two of them? She could still stand by Dizun's side, silently holding his heart and secretly loving him. But Yi Qingluo's appearance had disrupted all the rhythm. She had taken the venerable sovereign away. As a result, even Baisu, her sister, could hardly see Dizun. She was indeed much older than Dmo Xian. But so what? She adored Dmo Xian. For Dmo Xian, she did not hesitate to change her face. How much effort had she expended to find a suitable, young and beautiful face? Yi Qingluo, that slut, didn't put in any effort. What right did she have to become the overlord? He still had the cheek to strut around in front of her? What Yi Qingluo relied on was merely the overlord's favor. Right now Dizun was not by his side. In her hands, she had enough tools to threaten Yi Qingluo. She wanted to see how Yi Qingluo could still be so unyielding. Thinking of this, Bai Mei gradually suppressed the fear in her heart. The fingers that were gripping tightly onto the dark yin flute slowly lifted up, and shook it slightly in front of Yi Qingluo. After seeing the young girl's slightly sunken expression, Roland's eyes widened. Bai Mei's heart was satisfied and her face was filled with complacency. Yi Qingluo, don't forget, your brother is still in my hands. Her eyes suddenly flashed past a sharp and thick black. Her figure suddenly pressed down towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Accompanied by the strong wind whistling and vibrating sound, Bai Mei's complacent voice was also heard. Chapter 4204. Yi Qingluo's body instantly froze on the spot. Even if she lost her profound energy, with Old Man Song's help, she could avoid Bai Mei's attack. But Bai Mei's words made her feel as though her entire body was frozen into ice, unable to move. Her eyes were filled with an icy cold intent. Bai Mei sneered as she looked at the motionless Yi Qingluo. Her gaze turned sinister. An irresistible attack. Surging in the strong wind. The strong profound wave shook everything around Yi Qingluo. As though in the next moment, Yi Qingluo was swallowed up. She was dead meat. The smile on Bai Mei's face gradually widened. Suddenly, the surging profound wave shook in the air, just as it got close to Yi Qingluo. As though it was scattered by something. In a split second, it dispersed in mid-air. Bai Mei's smile froze on her face. Her eyes were filled with astonishment as she stared venomously at the fellow who spoiled her plans. She raised her eyes. Bai Mei saw a black-robed figure standing in front of Yi Qingluo at a moderate pace. The wide sleeves of his robe fluttered in the wind along with the aftershock. Under the strong wind, his tall and slender figure was extremely majestic and domineering. Bai Mei's face trembled as she bit her red lips and spoke unwillingly. "Palace Lord, what do you mean by this?" Right from the start, this palace lord of the secluded palace kept on spoiling their plans. She was willing to lower her stance and talk to him. But it didn't mean that she respected him. After all, he was a palace master in the Palace of Darkness on the surface. She had to give the revered some face. But in her heart, Bai Mei looked down on the palace lord of the secluded palace. If he was really doted on by the revered, and was the next successor, how could the revered possibly pass the dark yin flute to her behind his back? Because of this, after Bai Mei's plans were spoiled numerous times, her questioning tone wasn't as good as before. The man stood in front of the young lady. His expression was cold as that pair of dark eyes under the black robe locked onto Bai Mei. "My man, don't move." His voice was icy cold. Bai Mei's expression congealed. "This is the revered's intention. Palace Master, are you going to disobey the High Lord's orders?" "Master only wants me to bring her back to the Palace of Gloomy Shadows." The Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows answered calmly. "Everything I did was to bring her to the Palace of Darkness." Bai Mei growled unwillingly. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace glanced at her. "I'm here. You're not needed." "You like her?" Bai Mei pursed her red lips and a trace of anger appeared on her face. "The Venerable One doesn't believe you, and we can't believe you either." The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace laughed mockingly. "I don't care whether you believe me or not. This person belongs to this Palace Master. If you interfere, This palace master will kill you and then apologize to master. His words were enunciated clearly and enunciated word by word. But his tone was icy cold. Yiqing Luo totally couldn't tell if he was worried or concerned about her. The man standing in front of her. The change in his aura had already made her feel extremely unfamiliar. It was as if the person in front of him was still the same person, but his heart was different. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. Finally, she retracted her gaze and placed it on Bai Mei. Her gaze clashed with Bai Mei. It fell into Bai Mei's eyes. This was Yiqing Luo using the palace master of the Netherworld Palace's backing to provoke her. Chapter 4205. The palace master of Gloomy Palace smiled faintly and said, "You can try and see if I'm more important in master's heart or if you are more important." Bai Mei was both angry and embarrassed. Her face turned red. Of course, she didn't dare to compete with the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. She was very clear about her position. She was merely a tool used by the people behind the scenes in secluded Darkness Palace because of the grudge between her and Yiqing Luo. She knew very well how cruel the Venerable One could be. She suppressed her anger, clenched her fists, and spat out each word through gritted teeth. "I hope the palace master will live up to the Venerable One's expectations." The Palace of Gloomy Darkness sneered. "You don't have to worry about that." Bai Mei gritted her teeth and moved away. Yiqing Luo raised her eyes slightly and looked at the slender straight figure in front of her. The expression on his face did not change much. His eyes were calm and emotionless. Until the person in front of him turned around. The eyes under the black robe met hers. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips slightly. "Let him go and I will leave with you." The palace master of the Netherworld Palace didn't say anything. He just stared at her face with his dark eyes. He let out a low chuckle. He smiled. His voice was low and hoarse. Vaguely, it felt somewhat familiar. She furrowed her brows tightly, and there was some kind of emotion in her heart. By the side of her ear, his smiling voice was heard, interrupting her thoughts. "Yiqing Luo, for your gang of brothers you really can sacrifice anything." His smile seemed to contain some unfathomable meaning. It was like that in the past, and it's still like that now. With so many weaknesses, it'll be very difficult for you to succeed. He slowly squatted down, facing Yiqing Luo. When he leaned in close to her, using a voice that only the two of them could hear, he said, "You know very well how I feel about you. You also know the other meaning of leaving with me. The current you. The you who has lost your profound strength. No matter what I want to do, you won't be able to resist. For those people, do you really want to go with me?" Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled. It had another meaning. Another meaning between men and women. Naturally, she understood. But, "You won't." Her tone was very calm, and she did not panic because of the man's words. "You trust me that much?" The palace master of the Netherworld Palace seemed happy and smiled. Yiqing Luo looked at him calmly as she slowly shook her head. "The people behind the secluded palace will not allow you to do this." Two people on opposing sides. There was no such thing as a credible topic. However, she knew that the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Shadows were desperate to get their hands on her. And she had always been together with Dmo Xian. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had no chance at all. Therefore, that was why the Linglong Palace Hall was acting this way. Unexpectedly, during the time she was in the Linglong Palace. Coincidentally, she caught the eye of the Bloodbone Barbarian King, which led to the death of the Linglong Palace Master. Not only did it implicate Dmo Xian, almost the entire land domain was stirred up because of this. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness had lost another chance. Just in time. It was also because of the matter between her and the barbaric Bloodbone King. Even though he had sent Wu Fu, or to test the waters, the Palace of Gloomy Shadows probably still had some doubts about her. In the end, they might as well make use of the brothers in the world group whom she cared about, to threaten her. How would the people behind the scenes of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness possibly give the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness the chance and time to take liberties with her? When the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness heard her reply, his laughter grew louder. Chapter 4206. Want to know? Why did they become my prisoners? The palace lord pointed at the world group's youngsters and young ladies who were lying on the ground panting heavily. Yi Qing Luo stared at his face, which was covered by the black robe. Are you trying to tell me your real identity? The palace lord laughed so hard that his chest was heaving up and down. Do you want to know? Yi Qing Luo replied without hesitation, yes. The man's laughter stopped abruptly. That pair of serene and dark pupils were like a bottomless whirlpool. After a moment of silence, his body leaned forward slightly. The face covered by the black robe was right in front of her eyes. He laughed softly. This mask will be taken off by you personally. Yi Qing Luo's eyes reflected the man's black robe. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't move. Like this, the two of them maintained this posture for several breaths of time. She opened her mouth and her voice was calm. I don't have the energy to lift my hand, take it off yourself. His indifferent tone did not reveal much of his emotions. Such a rejection made the palace master of the Netherworld Palace laugh uncontrollably. He retracted his figure and slowly stood up. What a heartless woman, not even willing to give me a little bit of hope. He raised his hand. His slender long hand slowly landed on the black robe. Bit by bit, he pulled the black robe away. The black robe fluttered as it landed on the ground, slowly revealing the man's face. Yi Qing Luo's first glance was met with a pair of glazed black eyes. His gentle temperament wasn't unfamiliar to her. His handsome, picturesque face was filled with gentleness and elegance, totally unable to tell that he belonged to the dark side. His gentleness, like a noble prince, was emitted from his bones. Staring at the man in front of her, Yi Qing Luo laughed. It's indeed you. Gu Jingyu. Yes, Gu Jingyu. The man in front of her, wasn't he Nirvana Realm, Wind Valley Sect's young matriarch? Gu Jingyu? Previously, because he was in the Imperial Palace, he had overstepped his boundaries. After that, he was imprisoned in the Wind Valley Sect's underground prison. But later on, because of the secluded Darkness Palace, there was a huge battle. Gu Jingyu had disappeared during the Great Battle. At that time, he probably went to the Palace of Darkness as the Palace Master of the Palace of Darkness. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace raised her eyebrows and smiled gently. So you already guessed it was me? As he spoke, he raised his hand and touched his face. Aren't you afraid that this face is another one of my disguises? Previously I had my suspicions, but I didn't have any evidence. Yi Qing Luo looked at the man in front of her. As compared to the first time they met, he looked totally different. Your characteristics are ingrained in your bones. This cannot be imitated. From the moment he first saw the palace master of the Palace of Darkness, his gaze and the look in his eyes gave her a familiar feeling. However, he had never thought that he was someone from the Nirvana realm. Later on, he impersonated Dmo Xian, impersonated Patriarch Qiao. That pair of naked eyes. No matter how similar the imitation was, what was in his bones could not be faked. His gentle aura. No one could imitate it. Ha ha ha. Can I take it that you're praising me? Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace. No, he should be called Gu Jingyu now. His dark red lips curled up slightly. Yi Qing Luo sneered. You've really concealed yourself very deeply. Chapter 4207. The brothers of the world group laid on the ground, totally unable to move. They could only use a vicious gaze as they stared fiercely at Gu Jingyu. It's you. It's you. Yan Xiaoyi was so infuriated that her eyes turned red. You're actually the palace mistress of Secluded Palace. Gu Jingyu, you lied to us. The group of them, in order to reunite with Yi Qing Luo in the Earth Realm. Every day, other than eating and sleeping time, they would be cultivating with all their might. Gui Yu and Ghost Robber would change their methods to train them daily. Gui Wu would occasionally give them pointers. Later on, they received news that Yi Qing Luo had met with an accident in the Earth Realm. Everyone became even more anxious. They had finally raised their abilities to the Earth Realm, and Ghost Robber were willing to send them to the Earth Realm to reunite with Yi Qing Luo. But unexpectedly, they had just reached the Earth Realm and met Gu Jingyu. That time in Nirvana Realm, Gu Jingyu and the World Group had met several times. They all understood Gu Jingyu's feelings towards Yiqing Luo. After all, he was someone who had saved Yiqing Luo and helped her before. They totally didn't have much vigilance in their hearts. When they heard Gu Jingyu say that he had always been with Yiqing Luo, he then told them some interesting things that Yiqing Luo had experienced in the Earth realm. They instantly believed in Gu Jingyu. Following that, they followed Gu Jingyu to look for Yiqing Luo. After this search, when they opened their eyes again, they were already tied up and hung on the side of the cliff. By the side were those three ladies. They totally didn't suspect Gu Jingyu at all. The first thing they did was to worry about Gu Jingyu's safety, but no matter how they asked where Gu Jingyu was, while the three ladies were cursing and scolding or torturing them sinisterly, their tone seemed as though they didn't know Gu Jingyu. They had not expected. All of these were Gu Jingyu's scheme. It wasn't that Bai Mei and the others didn't know Gu Jingyu, but Gu Jingyu's identity was the palace mistress of Secluded Palace, the disciple of that revered of Secluded Palace. Facing the World Group's gazes, Gu Jingyu's smile didn't diminish as he was still as gentle as before. This palace lord isn't considered to be lying to you. After all, you have indeed seen Yiqing Luo, isn't it? Pui. Yan Shaoyi gritted her teeth and forced herself to get up from the ground. If you have the ability, fight with my Jin one-on-one. What kind of man are you to play tricks behind my back? Qiao Jin, who was holding her hand tightly. One-on-one? Are you sure it wasn't a one-sided beating by Gu Jingyu? Yan Shaoyi looked at Qiao Jin's expression and knew what he was thinking. She angrily flung his hand away. Look at how useless you are. Qiao Jin. Yan Shaoyi pursed her lips tightly as her gaze swiftly shot towards Yiqing Luo and stared at her own man resentfully for failing to meet her expectations, using a voice that could only be heard by the two of them. Huangfu family's successor can't even defeat a Gu Jingyu? Now isn't the time for you to conceal your ability. Haven't you noticed that Qing Luo's expression isn't right? Qiao Jin's expression froze. Haha. Such a pity now. Do you have the ability to stand up for Yiqing Luo? Gu Jingyu looked towards Bai Mei's direction. Bai Mei moved her fingers and the flute of dark yin was placed by her lips. Several sharp flute sounds rang out. The brothers of the World Group instantly groaned in pain. Yan Shaoyi's expression instantly turned pale. Cold sweat kept seeping out from her forehead. Qiao Jin suppressed his pain as he carried the young lady into his arms. Looking at the 10 over people who were groaning in pain on the ground, Yiqing Luo suddenly stretched out her hand as she tugged onto Gu Jingyu's robe. Chapter 4208. His ice-sealed eyes met Gu Jingyu's eyes without blinking. Gu Jingyu. Gu Jingyu's eyes drooped as he looked at that fair slender hand on his arm as his lips curled into an unfathomable smile. He raised his other hand and stopped Bai Mei from blowing the flute. Yiqing Luo's breathing was slightly hurried. Her entire body seemed to be burning with a scorching fire, burning her. Her legs were trembling slightly. She couldn't muster up any energy at all. But the anger surging in her chest supported her will as the hand which was locked on Gu Jingyu's arm kept on tightening. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei's sharp gaze shot over as she sized up Yiqing Luo suspiciously. When his line of sight fell on her legs, he felt a chill down his spine. Bai Mei's eyes lit up. Ha ha ha. I was wondering why you were so strange today. From the looks of it, you've suffered quite a serious injury. She was just saying, why was Yiqing Luo so low profile today? Initially, she thought it was because those people in the World Group were controlled by her, so Yiqing Luo had some misgivings. But from the looks of it now, Yiqing Luo apparently couldn't even take care of herself. If one took a closer look, she could totally tell. Yiqing Luo's slightly trembling legs, and that extremely abnormally pale face. Bai Mei took a look at Gu Jingyu as a vicious glint flashed past her eyes. Palace Lord, since Yiqing Luo is seriously injured, we don't need to discuss any terms with her. Just kill all of them, and we'll bring her back. Someone who couldn't even stand properly. Did she still need these threatening tools? With the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness around, she probably wouldn't have the chance to make a move on Yiqing Luo. But She could also use another method to torture Yiqing Luo. She could tell that Yiqing Luo cared about her bunch of brothers extremely, deep feelings and loyalty. Then, in front of Yiqing Luo, she could slowly torture these people to death. Whereas Yiqing Luo didn't even have the ability to save them. To Yiqing Luo, this was the real torture and agony. Why do I need you to tell me what to do? Gu Jingyu frowned and looked at Bai Mei with a cold look. Bai Mei gave a flirtatious smile. I'm only raising a suggestion, don't tell me. Palace Lord doesn't wish to break all of Yiqing Luo's wings, so that she can only choose to rely on you alone? He had to admit it. It was difficult for Bai Mei to capture the desire in a man's heart. As soon as he said this, Gu Jingyu's heart suddenly moved. Bai Mei covered her mouth and chuckled. Isn't this the best opportunity? When a woman has nothing left, she can only rely on you to live. There was something surging in Gu Jingyu's eyes. The pitch-black vortex expanded bit by bit. Seeing this, Bai Mei's gaze immediately swept towards the two people beside her. She lowered her voice and instructed. Do it now, you must. Use the cruelest method to kill those people. Hall Chief Wu Yan and Third Elder looked at each other before looking at Gu Jingyu with some fear. However, Gu Jingyu did not seem to object to Bai Mei's instructions. The two of them tried to test the waters as they walked towards the world group. Yiqing Luo's body moved as she lifted her feet and walked towards that direction. But her arm was held by Gu Jingyu. He used a little strength and pressed Yiqing Luo into his arms. Let go. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth as she cried out sharply. Chapter 4209. Yes, belonged to him. Belonged to him alone. This thought kept on enlarging in Gu Jingyu's mind. It almost drove him crazy. His heart was beating uncontrollably for it. He wanted Yiqing Luo. He wanted Yiqing Luo. No matter what methods he used. As long as he could keep Yiqing Luo by his side, anything was possible. Gu Jingyu, have you gone mad? Yiqing Luo sensed that the man who was hugging her tightly had an abnormal change in his emotions. That pair of arms which were clasped on her seemed as though he wanted to knead her into his bones and blood. His entire body was emitting a sinister and terrifying vicious qi, as though he wanted to destroy something, as though he was about to step into hell. His aura spread wildly in all directions. Yiqing Luo struggled, trying to break free from the man's restraint. But Gu Jingyu seemed to have sunk into some kind of crazy self-consciousness. He couldn't hear her voice at all. He only kept on tightening his arms. Yiqing Luo was in pain again, and she couldn't muster up any energy. Being pressed into his embrace, she was strangled till she couldn't breathe. Bai Mei saw Yiqing Luo's situation and her red lips curled into a complacent maniacal sneer. Ha ha ha. Yiqing Luo, don't worry, you'll be in even more pain soon. Stop struggling, save some energy and scream later. Her smile was malevolent, maniacal. He vented the jealousy and resentment that had accumulated in his chest for a long time. On the other side, Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder had already walked in front of the world group. Xiangui was like a huge mountain, blocking in front of those young men and young ladies. Jade eyes stared vigilantly at the surroundings. On the complicated patterns on the tortoise shell, that two intertwining things which looked like a snake or a dragon kept on intertwining as it stuck out its scarlet tongue. Both pairs of eyes were emitting a penetrating cold glint. Its huge body blocked Hall Master Wu Yan and the Third Elder. On the flat ground, the young men and women were panting heavily, trying to relieve the pain in their bodies from the twisting and twisting of their bodies. They could clearly hear the conversation between Bai Mei and Qing Luo. They wanted to resist, wanted to rebuke, but they didn't even have the energy to move. The minute Bai Mei blew that black flute, inside their bodies, it was like a surging ocean, shaking and surging with turbulent waves. At first, they felt as if there were thousands of thin needles poking into their bodies. It was as if thousands of worms were gnawing away at their bodies. It stung and itched. Then he felt as if he was on fire and as if he was in an ice house. Most painful and unbearable. It was in this asterisk. Their internal organs and bones all seemed to be broken, breaking one by one, and then reforming one by one. It was accompanied by a kind of tearing pain. This made them unable to resist at all. Even now, Bai Mei had put down her flute. The pain in his body had yet to subside. Yan Shaoyi panted heavily as her fingers clenched tightly into the flesh of her palm, gritting her teeth as she spoke out sharply, "Qingluo, we're all right. They can't hurt us." Yi Qingluo's situation was obviously not right. They absolutely could not become Yi Qingluo's burden. They could not let Yi Qingluo sacrifice herself for them again. Qiao Jin looked at the woman's trembling body, her pale lips, and the sweat on her forehead due to the pain and exertion. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Chapter 42:10. Don't try to be brave. His breathing was a little messy. The hand on the lady's waist tightened. The flute is still in Bai Mei's hands. If you act rashly, everyone will be in trouble. Yan Shaoyi heard that. Her body tensed up, her fingers tightened. The anger in her eyes intensified. We will not become Qingluo's burden. While he was saying this sentence, between his eyes, there seemed to be an indistinct, undetectable golden light. It set off that ordinary-looking face. It added a bit of holy and flawless charm to it. Yan Shaoyi's tightly clenched fingers were pried open by Qiao Jin, stopping her from harming herself. Following that, he held her hand in his palm. The man's warm and safe aura permeated her body and mind. Yan Shaoyi's angry heart gradually calmed down. She held Qiao Jin's hand. Her voice was soft but sonorous. "If anything happens to the needle, you don't bother about Huangfu family. I don't want anyone to get into trouble." Qiao Jin's lips curled, his eyes filled with gentleness. "I am the same as you, everyone is the same." Both of their words. The other 10 over people naturally heard what they said. Their chests seemed to be burning with the flames of war. It wasn't easy for them to get the chance to come to the Earth realm, to meet Yi Qingluo, to let Yi Qingluo verify their improvement. How could they be willing to die here like this? They weren't willing to become Bai Mei's tool to threaten Qingluo. Not willing to become Qingluo's burden. Not willing to see everyone in such pain. Final struggle. Bai Mei looked at the huge Xian Gui standing there and sneered. "The two of you just go ahead, I will settle that beast." Saying that, she leaped, attacking towards Xian Gui's direction. Between her fingers, the dark flute, which was emitting a dense evil qi, became her weapon. Xian Gui was proficient in defense. The sturdy tortoise shell, almost indestructible. When Bai Mei's attack came, Xian Gui's entire body shook with jade light. Bai Mei was sent flying backward. Bai Mei sneered, not in a hurry. Lowering her eyes, her gaze on the dark flute for a few breaths. Her eyes flashed a trace of ruthlessness. So what if it was one of the ancient 4 sacred beasts? It had become that slut's war pet. She would kill them without hesitation. The flute spun like a compass at his fingertips. Bang! The green light and the evil yin qi intertwined in the air. Xian Gui's indestructible body was forced to take a step back. The vibrating jade green light also rippled with layers upon layers of waves. The strong evil aura of the dark yin flute even caused Xian Gui's turtle shell to show signs of cracking. Taking advantage of this moment, Hall Chief Wu Yan and Third Elder flew into the area protected by Xian Gui, and went straight for the group of young boys and girls lying on the ground. He bent down and grabbed one of them by the collar and lifted him into the air. The young man's tender face was filled with pain. His face was extremely pale. But because of the sharp pain in his body, he didn't have the strength to struggle. Hall had Wu Yan dragged the young man and turned around, facing Yi Qingluo's direction. She could tell. Yi Qingluo cared a lot about these young men and young ladies. Just like how she cared about Wu Fuer. Since Yi Qingluo had hurt her Fu, time and time again, she would let Yi Qingluo have a taste of this pain. Hall Chief Wu Yan's face became distorted, his eyes filled with viciousness. Yi Qingluo's pupils constricted as she stared deadly at Hall Chief Wu Yan's hand. Chapter 42:11. Burning. Scorching. As though a volcano had erupted within her. Her body was extremely tense. As though something was unable to control this oppression, and was about to explode. Perhaps Hall Head Wu Yan's strength had increased. The young man groaned in pain as his teeth seeped out. Hall Head Wu Yan gave a sinister smile as he raised his hand. His palm was filled with a thick profound energy, mixed with a thick profound yin qi. As though it was played in slow motion, bit by bit, it pressed down towards the young man's head. His mouth was still laughing sinisterly. Yiqing Luo say. This palm, pressing down from his head. What do you think will happen? It must be very exciting, very exciting. Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated bit by bit. Her eyes were covered with a bright red glow, as it was fixed on Hall Head Wu Yan's palm without blinking. The anger in her chest was burning wantonly. Her entire body was trembling. Looking at Yiqing Luo's expression, Hall Head Wu Yan only felt carefree. Her hand was already on the young man's head. Just a little bit of strength. She could directly crush that head. She gave a sinister smile. Now, you know this feeling? When my Fu-er was bullied by you, I also felt the same way. As she spoke, her expression turned slightly crazy. The young man who was being dragged groaned in pain. But that young tender face was filled with stubbornness. He raised his head, obviously groaning in pain, but he still forced himself to hold on. As his eyes looked towards Yiqing Luo, saying word by word, say, Madam Qing Luo, don't care about me, save everyone. Every word he spat out was laboriously panting, but the tightness of her throat, and that pair of icy cold bone-piercing hands covering her head, it made it extremely difficult for her to even breathe. After he finished his words, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He forcefully shut his eyes. His heart was obviously filled with fear, but he still forced himself to hold on, to calm himself down. The young man's stubborn voice, as well as his duty-bound attitude, pierced deeply into the young lady's eyes. Her chest seemed to have a ball of raging fire. Hate herself. Failed to protect them. They trusted her so much. Trusted. Gu Jingyu, who was hugging Yiqing Luo tightly, suddenly stiffened. It was as if he had been burned by fire. He immediately let go of the person in his arms and took a few steps back. His gentle eyes stared at the person in front of him in shock. A girl who had lost the support of her strength. His body did not fall to the ground. Instead, he stood there with his back straight. No, not standing. To be more precise, it was floating there. Yes, floating. Yiqing Luo's body was surrounded by a violent red light. The roots intertwined around the girl. The girl was like a marionette. The strong wind whistled. The girl's red dress flew in the air. It was like a blazing flame, dazzling and eye-catching. Gu Jingyu looked at her blankly. From time to time, he would lower his head and look at the hands that had just embraced the girl. There was still a burning sensation in his palm. What was going on? Didn't she lose her profound energy? Now, what exactly was this surging aura? It was actually so powerful. Could it be, it was because Hall Master Wu Yan had acted against her brothers, which agitated her? Yiqing Luo's movements attracted Hall Master Wu Yan and Third Elder's attention. Both of their expressions changed drastically after exchanging glances. Chapter 42:12. Gu Jingyu's eyelids twitched, and when he looked at the young lady, his expression changed as he cried out sternly, Stop! Stop! Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder thought that Gu Jingyu was standing up for Yiqing Luo again. He didn't even turn his head back. Clenching his teeth, his hands didn't stop as he struck downwards. Gu Jingyu wanted to stop him, but it was too late. His figure swiftly retreated backwards. All the muscles in his body were tensed up due to nervousness. Bam! At the same time, the place where he was standing earlier. No, to be more accurate, it was within the radius of 10 meters where the young lady was standing. An explosion sound pierced through the sky. Between the shock waves, sand and dust rolled. Tyrannical and overbearing energy fluctuation, as though it was going to drown everything in the world. His heart suddenly tightened. Indeed, she was infuriated. Earlier at that instance he saw. The young lady slowly opened her eyes. A bewitching red, extremely resplendent. The most shocking thing was, under that red glow, there was a layer of frost. Just one look and it made Gu Jingyu's entire body turn cold, as he was terrified. Whereas on the other side, Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder's actions didn't stop, as though they were using a lightning-fast speed, intending to explode the young man's head in front of Yiqing Luo. This palm fell down without any obstruction. Excited blood was boiling in his body. Hall Head Wu Yan opened his mouth, sticking out his tongue to lick, preparing to enjoy the pleasure of the blood entering his mouth. In the blink of an eye, a deafening explosion sound was heard by the side of their ears. Following that was a tyrannical and overbearing energy, as it spread in the air. And, at the same time, at the moment when the explosion sound was heard, mixed with a deep and low dragon's roar. The deepest part of her soul was shocked by this dragon's roar. Not waiting for Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder's reaction, a bone-piercing hurricane sprinted over. Immediately following that, her body seemed to have been hit by something, fiercely. Her entire body instantly felt intense pain. Their bodies were directly sent flying by the attack. Bam! The two of them fell heavily onto the ground. That vicious pressure almost squeezed her internal organs into a ball. Large mouthfuls of blood flowed uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. Their eyes were filled with shock and terror as they stared in disbelief at the place where they had just been standing. A huge blue giant came into their sight. Dragon! It's a dragon! Hall Leader Wu Yan's voice was hoarse, and his entire body was trembling. The Third Elder was so stunned that he couldn't say a word. His seemingly benevolent face was constantly twisting and changing as his expression changed. Dragon, yes, this was a gigantic creature that was hovering in the sky, almost covering the entire sky. It was a blue dragon covered in blue dragon scales, as if it was wearing battle armor. They almost widened their eyes. The person who bumped into them just now, it was this dragon. Dragon, even for them, they had never seen a dragon in the Earth domain for so many years. Where did this dragon come from? It wasn't just Hall Leader Wu Yan and the Third Elder who were shocked. Even Bai Mei was so shocked by the sudden appearance of the dragon that she almost dropped her flute of dark yin. Her delicate body could not stop trembling. He was both excited and agitated. She knew that Yiqing Luo had a dragon. She was so jealous that she was about to go crazy. This blue dragon absolutely did not look any worse off than Yiqing Luo's. If she could subdue this blue dragon, to be of use to her. Chapter 42:13. Bai Mei had already forgotten. The moment the blue dragon appeared, it directly sent Hall Master Wu Yan and Third Elder flying. Her stomach was filled with boiling hot blood as her eyes were filled with uncontrollable greed. The sky-shaking dragon roar was still ringing, as though it could move the heaven and earth. That huge blue dragon, the blue dragon body, circled a few rounds in mid-air. Bit by bit, it slowly landed on the ground. The huge spiraling body, it surrounded the world group's young men and women. Because of the blue dragon's appearance, Bai Mei's vision was almost glued onto the blue dragon's body. Xian Gui immediately turned around and stood next to the blue dragon. Third Elder stared at that huge dragon's head in a daze. The blue dragon's eyes and that floating dragon whiskers. Their breathing became hurried. Hall Master Wu Yan couldn't help but tremble from excitement. He didn't even care that his internal organs were almost shattered because of the blue dragon's collision. This dragon, where did it come from? Why is there a dragon? It's a dragon, this body shape, it's definitely an adult dragon. This kind of exclamation made Bai Mei's restless heart even more excited. She licked her lips greedily. Her gaze fell onto Gu Jingyu. She tried to get closer as she tried to probe. Palace Lord, Yiqing Luo also has a dragon. If Palace Lord is able to get this dragon, then you will be able to go against Yiqing Luo's dragon. No one didn't want to get a dragon with outstanding ability. Bai Mei made up her mind to take the opportunity when Gu Jingyu went to get that dragon. She would take the opportunity to pick up the scraps from behind. As long as she got this blue dragon, she was a lady who had the blue dragon's protection. Even if the revered wanted her life, he would have to give face to the blue dragon and let her off. By then, she would have an additional layer of protection as compared to Gu Jingyu. However, She was filled with caution and probing. But she didn't get any response from Gu Jingyu. Bai Mei repeated her question again. But she discovered that Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed in one direction, not even blinking for a moment. That direction. Not the direction of the blue dragon. As though he totally didn't notice the blue dragon's appearance. The shock and astonishment on his face wasn't directed at the appearance of the blue dragon. Bai Mei followed Gu Jingyu's line of sight and looked in that direction. Suddenly, he felt as if his heart was being squeezed by something. Her eyes widened in horror. The joy and excitement from the blue dragon's appearance were now replaced by shock. Because what entered his eyes was a pair of fiery red eyes. Her eyes were as seductive as a fox's, and seemed to be burning with raging flames. However, it gave off a chill that rose from the bottom of one's feet to the top of one's head. The coldness of the ice spread throughout his limbs and bones. Bai Mei had never seen such terrifying eyes. There seemed to be a scream in his throat that wanted to gush out. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make a single sound. It was Yiqing Luo. That was Yiqing Luo. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's entire body was enveloped in a layer of ice-condensed ripples. The profound waves rippled. And if one did not carefully sense it, they would not be able to sense it at all. Bai Mei's eyes widened in disbelief. Just now, her heart was only on the blue dragon. Totally neglected Yiqing Luo's existence. Wasn't Yiqing Luo seriously injured, and didn't even have the energy to move on her own? Why did she still have such a strong, imposing manner? Most importantly, her entire body was emitting such a thick and powerful profound wave. Except for Gu Jingyu. Chapter 42:14. Bai Mei felt that something was slowly getting out of her control. She subconsciously tightened her grip on the dark yin flute in her hands. As long as she had the dark yin flute in her hands. As long as Yiqing Luo still cared about those people in the world group. Yiqing Luo would absolutely not be able to create any waves. Bai Mei kept hinting at herself in her heart. But her heart was beating wildly. There was no way to control it. She pressed on her restless chest as her sinister eyes squinted. No way. She must first contract with that dragon. As long as that blue dragon became her war pet. No matter what Yiqing Luo wanted to do, there was nothing to fear. Bai Mei tightened her fingers as her gaze swept past Yiqing Luo. Following that, her figure moved and she had already charged towards the direction of the blue dragon. The gazes of the few of them all landed on Lan Long suddenly. They saw a figure descending from the sky. Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder were both stunned. When they fixed their eyes, they saw the face of the person who descended from the sky clearly. It was Bai Mei. She speedily neared the blue dragon as she raised her hand and bit hard on her finger. Fresh red blood droplets slowly dripped onto the blue dragon. Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder's pupils dilated. A glint of strangeness and greed flashed past their eyes. Almost at the same time, the two of them took action at the same time. Casually grabbing a handful of sand from the ground, they scattered it towards the dripping blood droplets. Just as the blood droplets were about to land on the blue dragon, the sand swirled wildly, like a hot knife through butter. It forcefully blended the dripping blood droplets into the sand. Bai Mei saw that she was about to forcefully contract with the blue dragon. But she was stopped by Hall Head Wu Yen and Third Elder. Her eyes instantly turned red from anger. She stared fiercely at the both of them. Every man for himself, heaven and earth shall destroy him. Hall Head Wu Yen didn't even bother to take a look at Bai Mei as he speedily flew towards the blue dragon. This blue dragon, I want it. Get lost. This is my war pet. Third Elder's benevolent-looking face was filled with greed. The three of them clashed together. All of them wanted to stop the other party from forcefully contracting the blue dragon. The intense pain caused by the dark yin flute in the world group, which was encircled by the blue dragon, had already reduced by quite a bit. Their faces were pale as they slowly sat up. They looked at the huge blue dragon in front of them, which had almost formed a wall around them. All of them opened their mouths wide in astonishment. Following Yiqing Luo, they were experienced and knowledgeable. It was not the first time he had seen a dragon. But, to get so close to a dragon and be surrounded by its body, This was the first time. Yan Xiaoyi raised her head to look at the huge dragon's head. She stared unblinkingly at the pair of blue eyes and furrowed her brows. Jin, don't you feel that this blue dragon is very familiar? She did not know why, but she just felt that this blue dragon was very close to him. She could not sense any hostility from the blue dragon. Xiao Jin held her shoulders lightly, his gaze sizing up the blue dragon, and nodded, saying, "It seems to be protecting us." They were trapped in the dragon's body, not to stop them from escaping. Instead, it protected them within its range of protection. Xiaoyi. A weak voice was heard. And Ruopen also sat up straight, her face extremely pale. Group leader. We have to save group leader. Just now Long Yinzhan and Tong Ziqing were thrown down the cliff. Chapter 42:15. Yan Xiaoyi went over to support the swaying and Ruopan as her vision looked towards the edge of the cliff, which was on the verge of collapse. Quite a number of them heard Ruopan's words. They all raised their heads as their faces were filled with worry. Group leader is so incredible, he won't let anything happen to him. Yan Xiaoyi smiled. Jin and I will go down to look for group leader and Ziqing. You guys take care. With the blue dragon's protection, Yan Xiaoyi heaved a sigh of relief. Bai Mei and those two middle-aged women started killing each other for the blue dragon's ownership. As long as they controlled Bai Mei not to blow the flute in her hands, they didn't need to worry. After they got Long Yinzhan and Tong Ziqing back, they only needed to think of a way to expel the impurities in their bodies which were controlled by Bai Mei. They wouldn't become Yiqing Luo's burden. The both of you be careful, I will protect everyone. Lu Xiaoyi stood out. Yan Xiaoyi and Xiao Jin were about to fly up and jump out of the blue dragon's protection circle. The blue dragon's body suddenly moved. The trembling hurricane made the both of their actions halted. The next moment, they saw a figure sliding down from the blue dragon's scales. Yan Xiaoyi subconsciously rushed forward and steadily caught the person who was falling straight down. The soft petite body was filled with a thick stench of blood. When Yan Xiaoyi saw the person in her arms, her expression changed immediately. Ziqing? The person who slid down from the dragon's scales, wasn't it? Tong Ziqing, who used her own body to slow down the speed of falling to save Long Yinzhan? Where's group leader? Where is he? Yan Xiaoyi hugged Tong Ziqing tightly as her gaze swiftly shifted onto the blue dragon, looking around. The blue dragon had brought Tong Ziqing up from the bottom of the cliff. It should have saved Long Yinzhan too. But no matter how they searched, they didn't see Long Yinzhan's figure on the blue dragon's back. Yan Xiaoyi carefully placed Tong Ziqing, who was covered in blood, on the ground. Ruopan and Lu Xiaoyu immediately went up to support her, using their knees as a pillow for Tong Ziqing. Baiming Lu immediately took out a medicine box from her space pocket and bandaged Tong Ziqing's wounds. Why don't I see group leader? Yan Xiaoyi's brows creased even tighter as she looked at Xiao Jin in puzzlement. Xiao Jin's expression was solemn. I'll go over to take a look. He was just about to leave. The blue dragon blocked his path again. A huge dragon head stretched out, and a dragon's breath sprayed down. A low dragon roar came from its mouth. Xiao Jin paused and glanced sideways at Yan Xiaoyi. He seems to be stopping us? Yan Xiaoyi pursed her lips. She felt it too. Every time she and Xiao Jin wanted to go down the cliff to look for Long Yinzhan and Tong Ziqing, Blue Dragon would stop them. What was going on? This dragon roar. The blue dragon pressed even lower. However, the prestige of the dragon race was still there. A dragon's breath. The earth quaked and the mountains shook. The three of them who were fighting immediately looked at Blue Dragon. Seeing how Lan Long and the World Group's attitude was so intimate, Bai Mei's face immediately sunk, and with a backhand palm, the two middle-aged women in front of her flew out. Two idiots. Don't let those people take advantage of us. Bai Mei gritted her teeth and shouted angrily at the two of them. Then, she quickly flew towards the Blue Dragon. Hall leader Wu Yan and the third elder's faces also darkened slightly. But looking at how intimate the Blue Dragon was with those little brats, they could only bear with the greed in their hearts. Don't let them kill each other here. Instead, let those little brats contract the Blue Dragon. Chapter 42:16. Bai Mei's speed was extremely fast. After locking onto the blue dragon, Hall Head Wu Yan and Third Elder didn't stop her. Her finger, which was still stained with blood, it directly pressed onto the blue dragon's body. The moment her blood came into contact with the dragon's scales, Bai Mei's eyes shone with ecstasy. Success. Success. She was going to become a cultivator who owned a dragon as a war pet. She was going to obtain this dragon and make it her slave and her own weapon. In the future, she wouldn't have to lower herself anymore. The more Bai Mei thought about it, the more excited she was. But in the next instant, the smile on her face froze. The blue dragon, which was stained with her blood, casually shook its huge body. That smear of blood instantly dissipated. It didn't affect the blue dragon at all. Bai Mei opened her mouth wide in shock, unable to believe her own eyes. A powerful beast like the dragon clan. As long as her blood dripped onto the dragon's body, it would more or less affect the dragon's emotions. She could even use the blood to fuse with the dragon and form a telepathic link with the dragon. As long as she could convince this dragon, let it accept her willingly, this dragon would become her slave. But why this dragon was completely unaffected? She couldn't even form a telepathic link with that dragon. Bai Mei gritted her teeth, unwilling and unable to give up. She stretched out her hand once again and pressed onto the blue dragon's body. This time, the blue dragon was long prepared. When Bai Mei was about to get close, the blue dragon's tail swung and smashed heavily onto her back. The force of the blow caused Bai Mei's throat to gush out a large mouthful of blood. Her entire face turned deathly pale from the pain. Bai Mei rolled on the ground and immediately rolled out of the blue dragon's aura range before she stood up. The moment she moved, an intense pain came from her chest. She pressed onto her chest forcefully and gritted her teeth as she raised her head and stared angrily at the huge creature. She couldn't form a contract. She couldn't form a contract with this blue dragon. Could it be that this blue dragon already had an owner? It refused her to get close. But it took the initiative to get close to the bunch of trash in the world group. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was circling around the bunch of trash in the world group. Was he protecting them in an absolute manner? That dragon, surely it couldn't be. Belonged to Yiqing Luo, right? Yiqing Luo. That's right. Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei immediately turned to look at the young girl who was still standing at the same spot with her eyes wide open, and an imposing aura emanating from her body. No matter how strong the flames around him were, the girl didn't move at all. Even if that pair of treacherous and enchanting red eyes were open, he didn't even blink. Bai Mei's brows twitched. A strange feeling welled up in her heart. Her eyes flashed, and she suppressed the oppressive feeling brought by the young girl's aura. She looked straight at the young girl. There was something wrong with Yiqing Luo. It was as though he had lost his sense of self. Bai Mei pursed her lips tightly. After staring at Yiqing Luo for several breaths, there was no more hesitation. His figure moved and his figure had already neared Yiqing Luo. The surging profound waves were like sharp blades. The piercingly cold dark light constantly shook the air. When Bai Mei approached, she felt an endless pressure corroding her body and mind. She forcefully endured it as the corners of her lips curled upwards. Her young and beautiful face revealed a sinister expression. Immediately after, both her hands directly locked onto the young girl's shoulders. Bai Mei. Gu Jingyu's vision was fixed on Yiqing Luo. Chapter 42:17. Gu Jingyu also moved his body, but his speed was after all a little too slow. Bai Mei had already locked Yiqing Luo as her 5 fingers sealed Yiqing Luo's neck. Stop! Gu Jingyu stood by Bai Mei's side as he stretched out his hand to stop her. Bai Mei didn't evade as her lips curled into a cold smile. Palace Lord, if you move, I'll strangle her to death right now. As she said that, her 5 fingers tightened. The young lady's unblinking red eyes started to fluctuate. Her expressionless face turned slightly pale. She didn't struggle, but apparently, she was affected by Bai Mei's strength. Gu Jingyu's hand, which was stretched out in midair, froze. His face was filled with anger. Bai Mei. Bai Mei wasn't affected by the threat as she held on to Yiqing Luo tightly as she took quick steps towards the direction of the blue dragon. The moment she clamped down on the young lady, those youngsters in the world group who were encircled by the blue dragon all felt their hearts being lifted up. Their faces were filled with worry for Yiqing Luo. Suddenly they saw Bai Mei dragging Yiqing Luo as she headed towards their direction. All of them stood up, wanting to catch Yiqing Luo. But Bai Mei only held on to Yiqing Luo as the flute in her hand was pressed against Yiqing Luo's neck. Suddenly, a huge dragon head drooped down as it met her eyes. The dragon's breath was whistling and that pair of bronze bell-like huge dragon eyes seemed to be even bigger than Bai Mei's head. It was threatening her to let go of Yiqing Luo. Receiving this hint, Bai Mei smiled instead. You contract with me, and I will let go of Yiqing Luo. Indeed. The appearance of this dragon was related to Yiqing Luo. She took the opportunity when Yiqing Luo had no way to resist to make use of her to threaten the blue dragon. If the blue dragon cared about Yiqing Luo, she would be able to subdue this dragon. If the blue dragon didn't care about Yiqing Luo, she would kill Yiqing Luo, and it would be considered as ending her old enemy. No matter which point, she wouldn't lose out. Bai Mei, you're despicable and shameless. Yan Xiaoyi was so infuriated when she heard this. Just based on you and you want to contract the blue dragon? Pooey. Bai Mei was scolded but she didn't get angry. I advise you'd better help me and persuade that dragon. If I can't contract with it at most, let Yiqing Luo accompany me in death. I have nothing to worry about, so if I die then so be it. But Yiqing Luo is different. If she dies, you bunch of brothers who value relationships and righteousness would be heartbroken. Blue Dragon's azure eyes were filled with anger and annoyance towards Bai Mei. A powerful dragon breath gushed out of its nostrils and slammed into Bai Mei's face. Bai Mei sneered as she stabbed her flute fiercely towards Yiqing Luo's neck. The dark Yin flute, which was encircled with evil qi, was like a sharp blade, piercing through Yiqing Luo's skin. Blood gushed out from her neck. I don't want to waste my breath on you. Either she dies, or you make a contract with me. Bai Mei shouted. Her face was filled with a maniacal sneer. The strength of his hand was also extremely tight. However, her nervousness was hidden in the depths of her eyes. The blood that gushed out caused the blue dragon's eyes to flicker. Its head also retreated a little. It saw that this blue dragon indeed cared about Yiqing Luo. Bai Mei continued. After the contract, I will let her go, as well as everyone else here. Only a ghost would believe your words. Yan Xiaoyi spat fiercely as she shouted. Blue dragon, you absolutely cannot believe her. She dares to hurt Qing Luo. When the overlord rushes over, she will suffer more than death. Bai Mei's hand trembled slightly. Chapter 42:18. Bai Mei gritted her teeth as she looked at the young lady who was still frozen stiff and motionless. Her eyes squinted slightly. Now that things had come to this, there was no room for her to retreat anymore. These people, this dragon, would not give her any way out. She sneered as her face was filled with madness. Before the overlord rushes over, I will kill her. Even if I want to go to hell, I will drag her down with me. As she said that, she moved the flute closer to Yiqing Luo's neck. Under the furious gazes of the crowd who didn't dare to act rashly, Bai Mei took out her bitten hand and passed it over to the blue dragon. I don't want to waste time with you. Make your own choice. Do you want to become my slave and respect me, or do you want to give up? Yiqing Luo? The azure blue dragon's eyes were glistening with a dark whirlpool. The dragon's whiskers floated, showing its anger. I will count to 3. If you are still unable to decide, I will decide for you. Bai Mei had no intention to drag the time. If she waited till the overlord sensed something amiss and rushed over, not only would she not be able to kill Yiqing Luo, she would have to die here. 1. The dragon's breath sprayed as energy fluctuated. 2. The whirlwind turned into a whirlpool. The entire sky seemed to be dyed by a patch of black ink. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. That was the blue dragon's majesty. Bai Mei was expressionless as she maintained her posture and slowly spat out the last number. 3. When the third number was spat out, the blue dragon's breath was extremely coarse and heavy. Its huge body shook slightly. The ground also shook and cracked, setting off endless sand and dust. The huge dragon's body tightened bit by bit. The strong hurricane blew against Bai Mei's face, as though a knife was cutting her skin. Bai Mei suppressed the fear as her legs turned into jelly as she clenched her teeth and looked towards that azure blue dragon's eyes. The hand holding the dark yin flute slowly moved from Yiqing Luo's neck to her chest, stopping at the position of her heart. Her lips curled as she gave a sinister smile. Her eyes were filled with madness, as though she had lost her rationality. No one dared to move easily. He didn't dare to use Yiqing Luo's life as a bet. Each and every one of them was on guard as they glared threateningly at Bai Mei. After seeing Bai Mei's actions, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The blue dragon let out a low roar. The dragon's eyes fell on Bai Mei's raised hand. Then, it slowly lowered its head and approached the hand. Blue dragon, you really want to form a contract with her? When Yan Xiaoyi saw Blue Dragon's actions, she was so shocked that she almost jumped up. If you become her war pet, she will request you to kill all of us. People like Bai Mei, once she was given a chance to turn things around, he would definitely strut around and stand on your head. Blue Dragon's movements paused slightly. His azure blue eyes flickered with a strange light. But very soon, it restrained the thoughts in its eyes. Little by little, he approached Bai Mei. Looking at the approaching blue dragon, Bai Mei's face was filled with excitement and a proud smile. He was so excited that the blood in his body was boiling. The corners of his lips couldn't help but widen into the biggest arc. When the blue dragon was just a little bit away from her blood-stained hand, the blue dragon suddenly stopped. She couldn't wait. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.